All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Joaquin Escobar, Chair of the State Water Resources Control Board. Today is Tuesday, May 19th. It is 9:03 a.m., and I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll be joined shortly here by Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo and being joined this morning by Board Member Sean McGuire, Board Member Laurel Firestone, and Board Member Nicole Morgan. We're also being joined this morning by our Executive Director, Eric Oppenheimer, our two Chief Deputies, Karen Mogus and Eric Ekdahl, our Assistant Chief Counsel, Phil Wiles. Our clerk of the board today is Courtney Tyler, and assisting her is Elizabeth Carrillo and Susan Reyes. As you can see, this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and web components. If you're viewing us through our traditional webcast, you're either on the Cal EPA website or the YouTube live website. But if you intend on commenting on any of today's items, you need to be on the Zoom platform. There is a link and instructions on how to get onto the platform at the top of the agenda. But if you're having any challenges getting onto that platform, please do just email the clerk of the board at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov, and she can help get you onto the platform. Once you are on the platform, your camera will be off, you'll be on mute till it's your turn to speak on the item you've indicated. For everyone in the room, good morning, good to see everyone today. We're here in Sacramento in the California Environmental Protection Agency building. A few quick announcements for us as well. Please do observe the exits. If we happen to have an emergency, we'll calmly file out to Cesar Chavez Plaza and await further direction. Also, if you have and if you intend on commenting on any of today's items, you need to be signed up. There is a QR code and a laptop on the side of the room in order to sign up. But if you're having any challenges, please do just speak to the clerk, and she can help get you signed up. Once you're at the microphone, please introduce yourself and any affiliation if you feel so comfortable. And lastly, please do just silence our phones so we haven't interrupted meeting and discussion this morning. With that, we will move into public forum, our customary opportunity for folks to address the board on an item not pending before the board. And would like to, I believe we have one public forum commenter this morning, and would like to call up Ray to hear.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can. Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. All right, next slide, please. I'm sorry, next slide, please. At last month's board meeting, the Office of Chief Counsel blamed permittees for not meeting the March 2016 Report of Waste Discharge deadline. To my surprise, RB4's counsel informed me in a May 13th email that RB4 staff had sent out a notification to all LA County and Ventura County permittees in October of 2025, informing them the need to submit ROWDs by March 16th. However, RB4 counsel did not mention this at its last meeting, nor did the Assistant Executive Director who signed the October notice. Further, it was not posted on the board's website, which is a water code requirement per 13167, nor were any of the ROWDs posted on the website, which is also required under 13167 in deference to the public interest, which has a right to review and comment on any ROWD. It appears that RB4 has an interest in rolling over the WIMPs contained in the current MS4 permit. RB4 needs to be advised that the submittal of an ROWD doesn't trigger a pending action. It is only an application for an MS4 permit that requires a decision by the board, not staff. In any case, the Office of Chief Counsel's Q&A, as I mentioned previously, is invalid because it contains invalid 13287, which is embedded in SB 965, which is referenced in the Q&A. Next slide, please. Okay, ex parte corrections. Michael Lawford did the right thing by admitting that Water Code 13287 cannot be used to determine ex parte communication rules, and concluding that APA Chapter 4.5 applies. I recommend that it should be interpreted as follows. Stakeholders and the public interest in general can communicate with board members outside scheduled adjudicative meetings and workshops, as long as the communication is disclosed to all board members and is placed on the board's website with the required disclosure information. Ex parte communication may not be prohibited until 14 days before the scheduled adjudicative hearing. Each board member must decide this, and this somewhat aligns with Senate Bill 965. Next, NPDES permits are not subject to education, such as enrollment permittees, are not subject to ex parte communication rules. namely general industrial and construction and other permits adopted by the state board, with the CII permit being the possible exception, but will be limited to ex parte constraints as mentioned above. Next slide, please. The Office of Chief Counsel's April 13th memorandum on ex parte communication must be invalidated. I mentioned this to you before. The reference to ex parte communication RB4's agenda under notes on agenda must be eliminated because it mentions 13287. Must eliminate notices by the regional board and state board regarding disclosure requirements. The regional board's version mentions disclosure regarding general permits, while the state board's version mentions disclosure regarding general orders. And this is mentioned in the next slide. Both also contain web links to the water board sites that mention 13287. Next, the term general order should be removed from all board notices. As I mentioned, the term general order does not exist in state or federal law, but has been used interchangeably. The board might want to use general orders to apply to non-NPDES permits and 401 certifications. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's the example I showed you before. Here's the disparity between pending general permits and pending general orders, and we don't need to go over this again. Next slide, please. What's concerning about the ex parte disclosure for general permits and general orders is that it mentions nothing about disclosure for MS4 permits. RB4 Council noted that MS4 permits are not general permits, and it's clear that general orders have no legal authority. Therefore, the MS4 permit is not subject to disclosure requirements, at least under this scheme. Finally, I want to leave you with a quote from Hamlet. There's something rotten in Denmark, and I'll explain this to you, all of you, offline a little later. And thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Tahir. Appreciate your comments this morning. I believe that's all we have for public forum, so thank you again for your comments this morning, Mr. Tahir. Next, we'd like to go to board business. First item of board business is consideration of the board meeting minutes from the May 5th board meeting. Look to fellow board colleagues if there's any edits, and then otherwise, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Board Member Firestone,
Aye.
Board Member McGuire,
Aye.
Board Member Morgan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo,
Aye.
and Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. The board meeting minutes are adopted. That now brings us to item number 2 this morning, which is a proposed resolution for pyrethroid pesticide total maximum daily load for our Colorado River Basin Regional Board. I'd like to welcome folks up here. Good morning to you both. Thanks for being here with us.
Good morning, Chair Esquivel. Okay. Good morning, Chair Esquivel, board members, members of the public. My name is Emma McCorkle, and I'm a senior environmental scientist at the Colorado River Basin Regional Water Quality Control Board. And today I will be giving a presentation on the proposed basin plan amendment to the Water Quality Control Plan for the Colorado River Basin region to establish total maximum daily loads for pyrethroid pesticides in the Alamo River and the New River in Imperial County. It was approved by the Regional Board on July 9th, 2024, under Resolution R7 2024-24. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will start by going over the project overview, the chosen numeric targets, and planned implementation. This will then be followed by a discussion of interested party involvement and public comments received. Finally, I will address the project implementation and staff recommendation to the board for consideration. Next slide. This TMDL project is located in the Imperial Valley in Imperial County, which is dominated by irrigated agricultural land. The Alamo River and New River are surface water bodies in the Imperial Valley that are impaired by pyrethroid pesticides that are toxic to humans and aquatic life. Looking at the figure on the right, these bright blue lines indicate these two rivers located in the Salton Sea transboundary watershed. The pink shaded area is the New River watershed, and the yellow shaded area is the Alamo River watershed. The Regional Water Board is proposing to amend the basin plan to establish TMDLs for the 6 pyrethroid pesticides in the Alamo and New Rivers in Imperial County. Next slide. A review of collected water quality data from Alamo and New Rivers between 2003 and 2020 indicates the presence of pyrethroid compounds in water column samples, and their concentrations frequently exceeded numeric targets, which was the main factor for their listing on the 303D list. The pyrethroid concentrations found in sediment samples between 2003 and 2020 did not exceed the numeric targets. To address these impairments and to protect benthic and aquatic organisms, wildlife, and human health from potentially harmful effects of pyrethroid compounds, the allocations for pyrethroid compounds have been set equal to the numeric targets and will be implemented in permits as waste load and load allocations in both the Alamo and New Rivers. Next slide. Here's the list of the water quality objectives in the form of numeric targets for both the water column and sediment. These numeric targets are based on the updated UC Davis method criteria developed for the Central Valley Regional Board. The UC Davis method criteria have been applied by the Central Valley and Central Coast Water Boards to address pyrethroid impairments. Next slide. This TMDL will be implemented through our Regional Water Board's Imperial Valley Agricultural General Order for non-point sources of pollution and the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, permits for point sources of pollution. The general order is implemented through our region's Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program, which establishes a general waste discharge requirements for agricultural discharges that are members of a coalition group in the Imperial Valley. This general order includes the Water Quality Management Plan, or Farm Plan, which outlines the management practices on irrigated agricultural lands to minimize or prevent the discharge of waste to waters of the state. Furthermore, water quality restoration plans are triggered by exceedances and require a Water Board's approved improvement plan. For point sources, NPDES permitted municipalities and facilities will be regulated through permits for their discharges to the New River and Alamo River. NPDES permitted municipalities and facilities were identified as uncertain sources of pyrethroid pollution because their existing monitoring programs do not include monitoring for pyrethroids. Through the implementation of these TMDLs, the facilities will utilize the requirements put in place either through individual or general NPDES permits or waste discharge requirements, and therefore monitor for pyrethroid compounds in their effluent water. Next slide. As for out-of-state pollution from Mexico, we're going to work with all parties to the best of our ability. The United States International Boundary and Water Commission and the U.S. EPA have a primary responsibility for ensuring waste discharges from Mexico do not violate or contribute to a violation of water quality objectives in the New River downstream of the international boundary. To control the discharges of pyrethroids into the New River at the international boundary with Mexico, the Colorado River Basin Water Board will work with its federal partners to ensure attainment of the TMDL numeric targets. Next slide. The public process for this project included multiple opportunities for interested party involvement. A CEQA scoping meeting was held at the beginning of the project on February 25th, 2022. A public workshop was held on March 12th, 2024 during the regional board comment period ending April 10th, 2024. We received one comment from the Imperial Valley Irrigated Lands Coalition, or IVOC. The comments were addressed and included in the final staff report. The TMDLs were adopted on July 9th, 2024 by the regional board. Finally, the comment period for this hearing ended November 22nd, 2024, and we received one comment letter from IVOC. Those comments were addressed in a separate response that was made public 30 days before this meeting. Next slide. For the first comment regarding the proposed amendment not adequately addressing Mexican sources of pyrethroid loading and IVOC's request to delay implementation timelines until a binational solution is established, the staff would like to note that the Colorado River Basin Water Board will coordinate with federal partners, including the International Boundary and Water Commission and US EPA, to address transboundary pollution through treaty mechanisms and a mitigation plan. However, the TMDL must regulate all sources regardless of origin, and because it is concentration-based, each discharger is independently responsible for meeting water quality targets in the New River and Alamo River. Although coordination with federal partners will occur to address transboundary pollution, the TMDL must proceed by regulating all sources independently on a concentration basis without deferring implementation. Hence, implementation will proceed with a phased, adaptive approach while binational efforts continue. Next slide. Focusing on pollution from Mexico negates the fact that there are pyrethroid pollution sources that originate in California. This TMDL applies to the New and Alamo rivers. The Alamo River is also impaired by pyrethroids and has no flow originating in Mexico. The graphs at the bottom of the slide show similar concentrations of bifenthrin in both rivers. The flow rate of the Alamo River at the international boundary is roughly 1 cubic foot per second, caused by seepage from the All-American Canal. The entirety of the Alamo River's flow originates in California and is heavily dominated by agriculture. Delaying the implementation of the TMDL to address one pollution source of one river would allow additional pollution to continue discharging to both rivers. The top graph on the slide shows the amount of pyrethroids used in the Imperial Valley in 2018 and was pulled from a report published by the Department of Pesticide Regulation. It shows that the main source of pyrethroids in the Imperial Valley is of agricultural origin. In addition, the Imperial Valley Agricultural General Order already contains monitoring and benchmarks for bifenthrin, cyfluthrin, and cypermethrin. Management practices to restrict multiple pollutants, including pyrethroids, from entering surface water are required by that same order. Next slide. For the second comment regarding the use of the standard 5th percentile chronic and acute criteria for all 6 pyrethroids, the staff acknowledges the concerns raised by IVILC. This comment has already been addressed in a previous response to comments located in Attachment D of the staff report. To summarize, the staff selected the 2.5th percentile criteria as a balanced, scientifically supported approach that remains protective of sensitive species such as Hyalella azteca while avoiding over and under protection. This approach was reviewed and supported by the US EPA and incorporates conservative assumptions, ensuring a sufficient margin of safety despite current analytical limitations. Next slide. A comparison of the acute and chronic water quality criteria based on the 1st, 2.5th, and 5th percentiles with the water column toxicity for the sensitive species Hyalella azteca is presented here. The 2.5th percentile criteria is a good middle ground between the 1st and 5th percentiles. Next slide. With that, the staff of the Colorado River Basin region recommends the approval of the Resolution R7 2024-24 by the State Board. Next slide. I'd like to thank the board members and all attendees for your time. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCorkle. Really appreciate the region adopting these TMDLs and prioritizing pyrethroids here. It's not lost on me, tomorrow we'll have our Salt and Sea workshop. And so this work to really take a watershed look and ensure that the source water that feeds the sea is as appropriate and clean as it can be. And so really appreciate, again, the prioritization of this work. I feel it complements well our priority of ensuring that we continue to protect communities down around the Salton Sea. But importantly, really, again, take a watershed approach to ensuring that the sea can continue to maintain its beneficial uses and ultimately support the health and viability of the communities that live around it. So a lot of appreciation. No questions other than, and this is, certainly not the subject of our discussion here, but just wondering what other kind of priority TMDLs the region has identified for the watershed and what projects we might be expecting. And if you don't have anything right now, that's fine. We can always follow up with the region. But just, it does, to my mind, just elicit just a question as to like what more are we going to be doing here, and just very thankful again of the protective work that's gone on here from the region.
Yes, no, we agree that, what goes in is what is ultimately, left in the Salton Sea. So we have been prioritizing mostly pesticides and some of the other like bacteria, chlorides, those kinds of things. So we just actually last week approved an Alamo River TMDL for chloride and indicator bacteria. So we are trying to knock down as many impairments as we can in the tributaries to the Salton Sea, and then we'll start focusing on the Salton Sea itself. With all the lovely projects we're going to hear about tomorrow at the workshop that CNRA is doing.
Fantastic. Really appreciate that. Thank you for that response. Looking to fellow board colleagues if there's questions or comments. Vice Chair.
Well, maybe just in follow-up to that, do you have any comments about the restoration projects and where this fits in with respect to management strategies for the restoration projects?
Yeah, do you want to?
Or if you're around tomorrow, you could talk about it then. Yeah,
Salton Sea stuff, yeah. I mean,
I think this is a little bit separate than those restoration projects. Typically, those restoration projects, the Species Conservation Habitat Project, which is an amazing project, I've seen it myself, is that's kind of more infrastructural and trying to preserve the habitat. This is preserving, these kinds of TMDLs also are preserving a different habitat, which is the actual water bodies themselves. The Alamo and New River, there are fish in those rivers. And so, this is first and foremost aimed at protecting the life that exists within it.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Board Member McGuire.
Just a comment. I just appreciate the acknowledgement of the need for partnering with Mexico and looking at source contributions across the border. I think that's really vital on the New River. I know there's been a number of projects on the Mexico side looking at improving water quality, and they have a long way to go still, but they are making efforts. So I appreciate the acknowledgement, but at the same time, looking at the data and the facts on the ground and the indications that ag in the United States is contributing heavily to the pyrethroid loading in the river, and so in both rivers, and so something needs to be done there. So just thank you for that clarification. It was a question I was going to have, but you answered it in your presentation, so appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member. Yeah, definitely not an either or, but a yes and. Yeah. Any other comments from board colleagues? Seeing none, I think we're prepared for a motion then.
I'll make a motion to adopt and really appreciate the work on this.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Board Member Firestone.
Aye.
Board Member Morgan.
Aye.
Board Member McGuire.
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo.
Aye.
And Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. The vote is unanimous and the resolution is adopted. Thank you again. Much appreciation. All right. That now brings us to item number 3, which is an annual update on our racial equity action plan. And I'll give a moment for folks to swap up. And as they do, just want to say again, as by way of introduction, this discussion that the board has been having around racial equity, and importantly, our racial equity action plan, which is our actual implementation of our 2021 resolution, is not easy work. It's some of the most difficult discussions and work that we have before us because it isn't just about the societal challenges we face with inequity, but also the personal challenges I know that folks can often face. And so it's a very deeply personal discussion as much as it is as well here a societal one, and one that elicits a lot of emotion and not always the easiest to manage, but I feel some of the most important work that we have before us. So very proud of the opportunity here to elevate this last year's work around our racial equity action plan, and importantly, continue to commit us as an institution to these values that are foundational to our work. Because when we think of access to clean water, when we think of access to healthy waterways, we know that regrettably race is a predictor of the ability to have those things. And so long as that's the case, we know that we have work to do and an honest conversation to have around it, as difficult as it can be. So an incredible amount of thanks to the leadership and work of the folks that you see here before you, and would like to then hand it off here to Amy Cronson to kick us off. Oh, Apologies. And I believe Board Member Morgan, please, would you like to share some words as well as opening? Thank you.
I do. Thank you so much. I just really wanted to thank this group again for your continued work and dedication in bringing equity to the work we do here at the water boards. It's by far not an easy task and can be emotionally draining. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank each of you for bringing your lived experiences to the work and humanizing the very technical work that we do. And that's by far not easy. For me, my African ancestors were brought to the U.S. over 200 years ago, and as they were moved across the states, our bloodlines were mixed and our experiences were passed down to each new generation as we eventually ended up here in California. I am a first-generation Californian, and continuously each day, I am learning new about the state and about the struggles and challenges that we have here. So, as a civil engineer, I bring that technical experience to it. I also bring the lived experience that has been passed down from my ancestors. So while it's not lived experience from here in California, it's lived experience as being a female of color from a family of color that has, been through quite an ordeal here in the States and, coming here to California for a new life that hit quite a few road bumps as we were coming here to experience something different. And so, I bring that with me. However, I continue to learn every day from those that have been here far longer than my ancestors have been. And that brings me joy to continue to learn and to learn from all of you, to learn from others, and to continue to be able to bring my experiences and to learn from them and to look to make California a better place for all. And to, my hope is that we all can continue to learn from each other and to bring equity to all Californians. And so I thank you so much for this difficult work that you do day in and day out.
You're here. Thank you so much, Board Member. And really appreciate your leadership, not just here at the dais, but also in the program itself. And so the perspective you have and the contributions that you've made to this discussion are just incredibly invaluable. So just thank you. Ms. Cronson.
Thank you. Thank you both for your words, and thank you all for your support. I think mentioning lived experience is really important. That's something that we want to make sure that we hear and honor from all of the folks that we serve as well, and our staff. So really appreciate that recognition. With that, my name is Amy Cronson. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of Public Engagement, Equity, and Tribal Affairs. I'm joined here by my colleagues. You'll meet all of them individually, but Veronica Farwell, who is our Workforce Equity and Inclusion Advisor, and Christopher Marquis, who's our Public Engagement and Environmental Justice Specialist. So the purpose today, and good morning, Chair Esquivel, members of the board. The purpose of this item is to highlight the progress on the actions within the State Water Board's Racial Equity Action Plan that were prioritized from 2023 through 2025. The board completed our final year of implementing this action plan, and this annual update will focus on the progress made in 2025. The board is not taking any formal action on this item. Many of the actions and projects discussed have their own separate public engagement processes that we will not go over today. We will give an overview of the 2023 through 2025 Racial Equity Action Plan, followed by highlights from 2025, where many of our colleagues will share brief summaries from their divisions and offices and key accomplishments. We will end with any discussion and questions, and we will talk about the next iteration of the Racial Equity Action Plan since we completed this first 3-year term. Next slide, please. So the State Water Board and the 9 regional water boards, collectively known as the water boards, have a shared mission to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of California's water resources and drinking water. This mission is definitely strengthened by a commitment to racial equity and environmental justice. The water boards acknowledge and condemn inequities past and present in water quality, access, and affordability, and are proactively working to eliminate the structures and practices that perpetuate these inequities. Racial equity is integral to carrying on the water board's mission. Next slide, please.
Got excited. Sorry. Okay. Just as we have been mission driven, our vision has been clear. The Water Boards envision a California where race no longer predicts the access to or the quality of water resources for anybody in California. Internally, the Water Board's employees should be reflective of the racial and ethnic diversity at all levels of this organization. Lastly, we seek to have a racial equity lens consistently applied to the Water Board's decision-making processes. A racial equity lens is a way to approach work to consider racial equity impacts. Next slide, please. While our mission can be stated in one line, it is imperative to note that we have been on a mission. The journey of the Water Board shifting organizational culture, advancing equity, and pursuing justice started in 2016. In 2016, the State Water Board adopted the Human Right to Water Resolution, and following, several regions did so as well. The Human Right to Water recognizes that every person in the state has a right to safe, clean, and affordable water for human consumption, cooking, and sanitary purposes. In 2017, the board adopted definitions for tribal beneficial uses and basin plans. In 2019, the Water Boards adopted the Tribal Consultation Policy, strengthening the Water Board's commitment to meaningful tribal consultation. Also in 2019, the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience, also known as the Safer Drinking Water Program, was established to achieve the human right to water for all California residents. In 2018, we began to build internal capacity, and the Water Boards joined the Government Alliance on Race and Equity and the California Environmental Protection Agency's Advancing Racial Equity team. In 2020, the Water Boards formed their own team, comprised of dozens of employees who dedicated their discretionary time to implementing and discussing real practices of equity and belonging. In 2020, the board acknowledged the historic effects of institutional racism that must be confronted throughout government and directed staff to develop a priority plan of action. In 2021, the state board adopted the Racial Equity Resolution, which connects systemic racism and how we do our jobs every day and lays a foundation of accountability that we must begin to stand on. The three primary goals of the resolution are to acknowledge and condemn systemic racism and its effects, to institutionalize racial equity, and direct staff to act. In 2022, the Water Board developed a State Water Board Racial Equity Action Plan that was presented to the board in January of 2023. The Water Boards implemented the action plan for 3 years and published 3 annual updates. The 2024 plan included the progress and actions implemented in 2023. The 2025 update included the progress and actions implemented in 2024. And today, we get to discuss progress made in 2025 and the future of racial equity at the Water Boards. You can access the full annual report of the Water Boards Racial Equity Action Plan at the webpage waterboards.ca.gov/racial_equity. Next slide, please. As I previously stated, the State Water Board's resolution directed staff to develop an action plan. It shall be resolved that the Water Board will normalize conversations about racial equity, foster a workforce that integrates racial equity into its work, effectively reach and engage Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color and tribes, be metric-driven to evaluate progress, incorporate all state board divisions, offices, and programs, and address all aspects of our work. Next slide, please. The action plan has 4 main parts: the vision, the strategic directions, the goals, and the actions. The vision is where we want to end up. The strategic directions are how we will achieve our vision. The goals are the outcomes we are working toward, and the actions is what we should do to achieve our goals.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Veronica. So this graph on the screen is a summary of the 2025 actions. It shows the number of actions in each stage of completion for each goal. 38 of the 53 are now considered complete, although we would like to say that they are in a place that is sustainable. 26% of those are in progress and 2% are in the scoping phase. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a future slide. Next slide, please. This is a comparison between 2024 and 2025 to show the progress that was made during that year. This graph compares the number of actions in each stage of completion at the end of 2024 versus the end of 2025. As we came to the end of this horizon, we completed more actions in 2025 than we did in 2024, which shows our continued commitment to implement the action plan at a steady pace. Next slide. Additionally, we recognize that while this is a state water board action plan, our regional water board partners are also working on racial equity in their ways and through their means. And so this is a summary slide of regional water board formal actions. This version of the annual report does do a deeper dive of key racial equity and environmental justice efforts happening at the regional boards and includes whether or not the Regional Water Board established a racial equity working group, if they adopted a racial equity resolution, and if they developed a racial equity action plan or a similar document. As you can see, most of the regional boards are well on their way. Actually, all of them are well on their way. And we encourage folks to connect with the Regional Water Board in your area to learn more about their racial equity efforts. Next slide. So now we will get into those 2025 highlights. We will present on highlights from the year for the 3 strategic directions, as Veronica outlined. And then our colleagues here from divisions and offices will present high-level summaries of progress made in their division or office. So we'll do that in 2 groups. We have the first group already up here with us. And then if you'll bear with us, we will do a quick transition at a further slide and bring up the rest of them. Next slide, please. So first, highlighting strategic direction number 1, which is integrating racial equity, measuring impact, and measuring impact to infuse racial equity throughout the water board's policies, programs, and practices, and measure progress toward goals and adapt when necessary. There are 2 goals under this strategic direction. 1A is that water boards data are accessible, equitable, and culturally relevant. Goal 1B is that programs and policies are evaluated and realigned to address racial injustices. The 22 actions between these 2 goals generally explore using data to identify inequities in water quality and incorporating equity in water boards' policies, programs, and practices. Next slide, please. So under strategic direction, which is creating and maintaining spaces for inclusion and belonging, Goal 2A is water board staff and leadership reflects the diversity of California. Goal 2B is to foster a culture of inclusion and belonging. There are 9 actions between these 2 goals that help preserve the diversity of California at the water boards. Next slide, please. Strategic direction number 3 is activating Black, Indigenous, and people of color community wisdom and sharing power. This aims to foster open communications with voices of Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color, share power with these communities by cultivating authentic relationships and partnering with them, offering education and resources to raise awareness of the water board's work, and incorporating their wisdom in decision-making processes. There are 3 goals under this strategic direction. Goal 3A is engage with BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, people of color communities by providing effective language access services and accessible communication. Goal 3B is to remove barriers for community access and participation in water decision-making by providing resources for capacity building, including funding, training, and education. And Goal 3 is consulting, collaborating, and partnering with BIPOC communities in decision-making processes. The 22 actions between these 3 goals prompt the water boards to shift towards equity-centered communication and engagement to reduce barriers that prevent engagement in decision-making processes. Next slide, please. With that, I will introduce Anna Holder from our Office of Information Management and Analysis to discuss their highlights.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Esquivel, board members. everyone in the room and online. My name is Anna Holder. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Open Data Science Equity and Tribal Coordinator in our Office of Information Management and Analysis, or OIMA, as we like to call ourselves. OIMA has continued to make progress on all of the actions assigned to us in the Racial Equity Action Plan and consider all of them to be complete. Today, I want to highlight 4 projects we think you'll be most interested in. First up is the Equity Data Handbook. The Equity Data Handbook is a living resource that's meant to support water board staff with incorporating racial equity concepts, principles, and practices into their data-centered workflows. To be clear, this handbook is not designed to be a top-down directive or requirement for all staff to implement every single piece of the handbook into their work. Rather, it's meant to serve as a reference, a guide with steps, frameworks, questions to consider as we do our data-intensive work, as well as a compilation of human-approved and curated resources that staff can reuse and remix to lower the barriers and reduce the time it takes for them to integrate and operationalize equity into their work. In 2025, we completed 3 rounds of internal review of the handbook. We integrated the majority of the feedback that we received from our reviewers, as well as made a number of other improvements that we just wanted to make while we were making edits. From January to June of this year, we've been delivering demonstration presentations to water boards, roundtables, all staff, and other meetings. And since January, we've delivered 24 presentations and have a few more scheduled between now and the end of June. We designed the Equity Data Handbook to be a living resource. So while we consider the handbook complete enough for staff to use now, we already have a long list of items, additional resources that we would like to revise or add to the handbook so it continues to iterate and evolve and support the needs of the water boards. After we finish delivering these rollout presentations, our equity team in OIMA is going to switch gears and begin to tackle those edits. And in a moment, I'll provide a high-level overview of what's in the handbook. Next is the Racial Equity Data Subcommittee of the Environmental Justice Roundtable. You can see that on the second row of the slide. The purpose of this subcommittee is to build and enhance individual staff, team, and organizational capacity to regularly use and implement an equity lens in our data-intensive work to advance racial equity at the water boards. In 2025, OIMA and OPEDA continued hosting subcommittee meetings every 6 weeks. These meetings are a welcoming and casual space for practitioners at the water boards to connect, share their work, ask for feedback, and importantly, build community. In 2024, the subcommittee had about 20 to 30 members, and right now we have over 60 members, many of which have joined in the last 6 months or so. We expect that number to continue to grow as more folks at the water boards take up the charge of operationalizing equity into their work. Moving forward, we want to support subcommittee members with building their own capacity and expertise. We want to develop resources that members and others can use to make it easier to do their data-intensive work with an equity lens. And we want to work with our equity and data practitioners throughout the water boards to document use cases and celebrate water boards individuals and teams that have begun to operationalize equity into their data-intensive work, and then add those use cases to the handbook. The third project is our tribal data mapping tool. During last year's update, we referred to this resource as the Tribal Water Data Map, and I had to make some comments acknowledging that that name was a misnomer, since the map does not show tribally stewarded data sets. Rather, it serves as a compilation of curated data and sources that may be of interest to tribes doing water and environmental work. And at that time, I asked for help with rebranding. So huge shout out and thanks to our partners at the Yurok Tribe Environmental Department who recommended this name change. We could not make edits fast enough. In 2025, our amazing OIMA fellows continued to add layers that have been requested by tribes to the mapping tool, and we continued engaging with our tribal partners to solicit feedback and prioritize future updates. This including a demonstration, giving a demonstration presentation during the July 2025 California Native American Tribal GIS Summit, which was held in this building. This year, we hope to work with our tribal affairs and integrated report partners to add a chapter to the manual that's associated with the tool dedicated to supporting tribal beneficial uses. This chapter will showcase data sets tribes might want to use to support their efforts and will complement the tribal beneficial use guidance that the OPEDA Tribal Affairs team has been developing in partnership with tribes. Last but not least is our tribally centered freshwater and estuarine harmful algal bloom, or FHAB, monitoring training series. There's a lot of jargon coming, so hang tight with me. The purpose of this training series is to support California Native American tribes in building capacity and developing programs in areas of harmful algal bloom monitoring, data analysis, and data use, and to more easily partner with our State Board Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, and specifically the FHAB program, as well as the California Cyanobacteria and Harmful Algal Bloom Network, or CCHAB network, which is part of the California Water Quality Monitoring Council, whose executive director is also in OEMA. In 2025, the Swamp FHAB staff brought together a tribal advisory committee who we met with them about monthly to develop content for the series and to identify tribal experts to invite to be instructors as part of each course. This year, we will deliver all 7 courses in the series. We've already delivered 4. Course 5 will be delivered next week on May 27th. There's still time to register. And the final 2 courses will be delivered sometime between October and December of this year. We're taking a break because people are out managing harmful algal blooms this summer. For the 4 courses we've had thus far, over 50 individuals representing 27 California tribes or tribal organizations with interest in all 9 regions of the Water Board have engaged in the series in some way. All recordings and slides are available on the FHAB Training Series webpage, and we hope that tribes and others will utilize these resources well into the future. Next slide, please. So circling back to the Equity Data Handbook, the handbook can be categorized into 4 buckets. The first 3 chapters provide grounding, context for the handbook, and quick guidance for folks who are unsure of where to start with operationalizing equity into their data-intensive work. The bulk of the handbook includes chapters for each phase of the data lifecycle, which is depicted on the right side of this slide, if that's a new term for folks. And each chapter provides guidance, best practices, and resources to help staff complete that phase of the data lifecycle with an equity lens. The use cases chapter provides examples of how Water Board's staff have worked to operationalize equity into their work, and the last 2 chapters have bonus material in the form of an appendix and resource pages. I've recorded a version of the demonstration presentations that we've been giving to staff and have linked that, as well as a copy of the slides that I've been sharing to the resource page of the handbook, so staff and our partners can refer to them moving forward. And with that, I would like to pass things over to my colleague in the Division of Water Quality. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Ms. Holder.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning. My name is Annalisa Kihara. I am the Assistant Deputy Director in the Division of Water Quality, and just wanted to share that in DWQ, there is a good handful of staff, including myself, that had participated in the development of the racial equity resolution and the action plan. So it was a wonderful experience, and we do feel that moving the needle in the space is important to the work that we do. So I'll just be touching on some of the accomplishments that we've had in the Division of Water Quality. The first being that we added demographic data to the integrated report to identify impairments that disproportionately impact disadvantaged groups. This was one of the actual actions as part of the Racial Equity Action Plan. I'll also want to just add that we are also bringing this lens to more of our programs in DWQ, recognizing that just a demographic data set is so important to just kind of opening up our lens in terms of our programs and the data that we look at when we make informed decisions. One recent example is in our site cleanup program, which our team had shared those examples at the last board meeting as well. We've also prioritized 319H grant funds to implement the East Fork San Gabriel River Trash TMDL project. So 319H grant funding, there isn't a lot, there's always more need, but that was one project that was implemented very quickly that we were very proud of, supporting a lot of the work down in San Gabriel River. We began and continued development of the urban stormwater infiltration policy with a goal to address distributional justice and also ensuring that the benefits and burdens of capture and infiltration projects are shared fairly. So this is just kind of recognizing that in a lot of the green space and stormwater, we want to make sure that all communities are enjoying and benefiting from these resources. Under outstanding, we also want to support additional guidance, tools, and materials, and plan to develop a racial equity toolkit and results-based accountability approach, focusing on environmental justice-related data gaps. This is one item that was also included as part of the action plan. And we actually started this effort about 2 years ago, working with a training academy to pilot results-based accountability approaches through a class offered to staff. And so have been really trying to figure out what's the right type of tool to implement so that it can be used effectively with all of our programs. Under ongoing, we are continuing to lead and support racial equity and environmental justice discussions through our program roundtables. We're also identifying the tools and resources to support the chairs leading and normalizing these discussions. We kicked this off through, we actually kicked this off last year with a survey to all of the roundtable participants to get some feedback in terms of what do you need, how are the discussions going since implementation of the Racial Equity Action Plan, and what are some areas of development and support that we can start planning and developing to help these discussions. One example is the Data Equity Handbook actually presented by Anna. She visited almost pretty much every roundtable to provide a demo, which we have a good amount of roundtables at the water boards. And so a lot of gratitude to Anna for her time on that. Next slide, please. So one recent and ongoing effort I'm proud to highlight is one that is a board priority. In 2024, we began a contract with UCLA to conduct a similar assessment that we did for drinking water, but for wastewater. The goal of our wastewater needs assessment is to assess California's wastewater needs with a focus on disadvantaged and underserved communities, but also looking at the systems that can potentially support bringing human right to sanitation to those communities. This includes identifying baseline conditions, systems that need support, and the solutions and costs necessary to address those concerns. Similar to the drinking water needs assessment, we plan to issue a draft list of facilities this summer to prioritize potential future funding. So we also do have the report summarizing the first phase of the project on our program website, and that was released in 2025, where the first phase really included setting up the building blocks and the criteria used to develop this priority list that we will be releasing soon. And so I also wanted to just take this opportunity to thank the contract team and then also our advisory group. So we have an advisory group of 30 members that brings a community, systems, academic, many lenses to the work in this space. And so they provide it through a whole series of advisory group meetings that we've had through the last 2 years. And then with that, I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Kahara.
Next slide, please. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was me. Hello, board members. I'm Jessica Bean with the Division of Water Rights. And just to dive into things here, I want to note that really what I'm going to talk about with the Division of Water Rights today goes beyond our commitments in the action plan, because a lot of the commitments we had in there we used as a jumping off point, and we've seen a lot of additional successes and accomplishments since then, and we're building from that. And many of these you're very familiar with. Many of them are priority actions. So in our accomplishments, here, we have the fact that we developed emergency in-stream flows for the Scott and Shasta rivers, and that was in January of 2025. And as you are all aware, in September of that year, AB 263 extended those emergency regulations through January of 2031 or until permanent rules are adopted. And we are working on a scientific basis report and economic analysis for the baseline minimum flow recommendations. And that is involving quite a bit of broad community engagement, but also a lot with our tribal partners in the area. Similar work is being done in the public engagement efforts for the Bay Delta update. We have substantial enhanced public engagement, which I'll speak about in the next slide. So, and I'll also speak about the CalWaters work as well. So if we look over in the ongoing work, I wanted to point to the continuing collaboration with California Native American tribes in Clear Lake. And this is something that's pretty exciting right now. We've been working with many of the tribes in Clear Lake on a co-management agreement. Earlier this year, we had a tribal summit that we have had, I believe it was our third or fourth summit that we've had to talk about the Clear Lake hitch situation. And at that time, tribal leaders, as well as leaders from the State Water Board and Cal EPA and CNRA and other partner agencies agreed to develop this co-management agreement sometime this year. So we are working towards that and looking forward to it. But we're also doing a lot of partner work with the tribal EPAs in the area. We are helping to facilitate data collection for them and coordinating data across both tribal EPAs and the state and local governments, but also community collaboration and different scientific programs that are happening there, also with the County of Lake. So there's some pretty exciting work happening out there, and it is not just our work, but it's very exciting because there's a huge collaboration there that's been very successful. Next slide, please. So looking specifically at the Bay Delta engagement that I mentioned, the Bay Delta is one of the board's highest priorities, and we have some proposals in the current draft plan that really came out of the assignment of a tribal coordinator, a specific tribal coordinator that came out of the action plan. And so I just wanted to note some of the proposals in that draft plan, which is the creation of a Bay Delta Plan Tribal Advisory Group, integration of traditional ecological knowledge. The proposal also designates a single point of contact for tribal issues related to the Bay Delta, designates tribal, traditional, and cultural beneficial uses watershed-wide, and also suggests additional monitoring related to harmful algal blooms. And these proposals came out of a substantial amount of work that the Bay Delta team did to speak with community members, but also to work with tribal representatives. And so, again, these are proposals that are coming forward. Next slide, please. And then I did want to note our data modernization efforts within the Division of Water Rights. It was a pretty big accomplishment that we were able to launch the California Water Accounting Tracking and Reporting System. And I did note, I believe it says we're going to implement the system in the plan. And I wanted to note we're at the very beginning stages of that, right? So this is a long-term accomplishment that we hope to see improvements on each year, because it's streamlining our water rights annual reporting, but it's improving data accuracy and then enhancing transparency, because now the public can come in and they can access this information, they can see what is there, and as we continue to use the system, we're going to improve data going forward, and that's going to be very, very important for decision-making throughout the state. For the first year of reporting that we had, we did extensive engagement and outreach, both with our user groups that we're going to need to use the system, but also folks that might be using it not for reporting, but for looking through the data. So we had about 9,500 public users. And what's worth noting is in this big transition into this first year of reporting, we actually had similar compliance to 2025, which is a pretty big accomplishment to get everybody on board to move from a system they've been using for decades into a new system. And so with that, I'm going to pause and I believe pass things over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bean.
Thank you. And I will take the next slide, please. So I will be presenting for our Division of Drinking Water. We work closely with them on many things, including the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience Drinking Water Program. But they have many accomplishments as well. The first is that they employed equity impact analysis in the development of certain maximum contaminant levels. They also finalized the 2025 Drinking Water Needs Assessment with the results reflected into the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience, or SAFER dashboard. They also established a water shutoff protection complaint investigation team and system. And for ongoing, they are continuing to work on new maximum contaminant levels for PFAS and manganese, as well as looking at prioritization of other maximum contaminant levels to potentially make adjustments to. And they will continue the data-driven prioritization of communities without safe drinking water. So for that project, they are working with our equity data specialist on including demographics data and other data into the prioritization tool, meaning that they will consider communities when developing new maximum contaminant levels to make sure that we're getting at the right levels at the right time for the right communities. Next slide, please. And I'm passing it to Mike Downey.
Thanks, Amy. Mike Downey. I'm one of the assistant deputy directors in the Division of Financial Assistance. Very happy to talk about the contributions that Division of Financial Assistance made to the Racial Equity Action Plan. And wanted to give a shout out to, like my colleague said, the different racial equity groups within the divisions that have been volunteering their time to really see these actions through and do a better job of collaborating, brainstorming, and also documenting all these efforts. So one thing that the Division of Financial Assistance has been good at is the board has been prioritizing disadvantaged communities for many years through the funding programs. Some of the accomplishments from the action plan include some more specifics. One of those is including better demographic information in our annual reports as part of the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. We continue to prioritize funding for orphan site cleanup funds in coordination with the regional boards in those disadvantaged and environmental justice areas. We did make some updates to the site cleanup sub-account program, including rankings, a new ranking system that benefited disadvantaged environmental justice communities, again, in line with board priorities there. And then also incorporating into the fund expenditure plan that manages the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, system strategy for the domestic wells and state small water systems. Great accomplishments. The ongoing portion of that work is that we see the need to get a little bit better at how we portray some of that demographic information. I think one of the challenges definitely is looking at California as a large state and doing some of that benchmarking, figuring out, how do we tell that story for such a large and diverse state? So working with our colleagues in OEMA to continue that work. Next slide, please. Specifically in this state fiscal year, we continue to prioritize, again, those small and disadvantaged communities for multiple types of funding, both planning and construction assistance, but also interim and urgent response. So committed over $25 million to support those interim and emergency assistance funding agreements for domestic well owners and state small water systems. Committed almost $150 million through technical assistance for disadvantaged communities. And a shout out that we appointed the first wastewater administrator. Next slide. Along the theme of a large state, you'll notice that over 3,000 public water systems amongst 6 different Division of Drinking Water sections what continue to focus on those failing systems and at-risk systems, but just a huge amount of funding committed. Again, focused on failing and at-risk. You can see over 132 water systems that have some sort of funding committed to addressing those issues for those systems, but over 430 systems receiving some sort of type of assistance, whether that's through our technical assistance program, direct assistance through planning grants or construction funding, or that interim assistance we talked about earlier. Next slide, please.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I will also say this is our last slide before we switch presenters. So Jackie, Lucia, James, and Nathan, be ready to come up after this slide. But on that great note from Mike, I wanted to highlight something that we are working with the Division of Financial Assistance on. This has happened in the 2026 calendar year, although it's been ongoing for many years in working toward it. So the board, you all, allocated $5 million from the cleanup and abatement account for projects benefiting disadvantaged environmental justice or tribal communities. Eligible projects include those that assist with cleanup and abatement of waste impacts on waters of the state. Recipients may be public agencies, tribal governments, nonprofits serving disadvantaged communities. And the project benefit should be an economically disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged environmental justice community based on the CalEnviroScreen tool and having a rating of greater than or equal to 50, or a tribal community. The funding range is anywhere from $1 million to $5 million per project. The minimum is $1 million. The maximum project completion time would be 5 years, and the scope includes community engagement and outreach directly related to project implementation. So we wanted to highlight this one for many reasons. One, it's always great to get funding out to communities for projects that will benefit them for many years to come. We wanted to specifically allocate some of this cleanup and abatement funding to projects in environmental justice and tribal communities, as they are often not the recipients of a lot of this funding. So it was great working with the Division of Financial Assistance and other folks to make sure that we could find a way for these communities to benefit from that cleanup and abatement account funding. So look out for the implementation of this allocation soon, and its contributions to the Racial Equity Action Plan from years previous as well. So with that, we'll swap out the presenters really quick, and we will start the next slide with Jackie Carpenter. Thank you, everyone.
Many, many thanks to our presenters here. We'll give a moment for folks to swap out.
Oh, I forgot Selena. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for your patience. With that, I will pass the mic to Jackie Carpenter, our Communications Director.
Having issues with the chair too. Okay. So good morning, board members. Good to see you. I'm Jackie Carpenter. I'm the Communications Director for the State Water Board, and we also handle media and communications for all nine regional boards. I'd like to give you an overview of what we've been working on in the communications office here over the last reporting period. And then I'd like to dive a tiny bit deeper into the local media piece. So first off, when we started in the reporting period, we kind of gave our visuals a good look to see if they really were representing diverse communities, especially in social media and in terms of the photography we're using. And I think that, and we also did a kind of audit of all of our social media channels, and that gave us some good input in terms of how we can make them not only more engaging, but also more representative. And then we also have been working a lot with local media, I'm going to get into that in a moment, to elicit more reporting at the local level on issues like small projects and small communities that may not always get the interest or attention from larger outlets. We're also in the process, hopefully this summer, of completing a comprehensive editorial guide, of which there will be an inclusive language guide. And this is kind of alerting folks to terms and things that we might use that have a certain sort of history to them we may not realize. So it's been kind of interesting putting that together, because there are terms that even I use sometimes I didn't quite recognize their sort of lineage. So that's an ongoing project that we are looking to complete this summer. I'd like to just take the few moments I have to talk a little bit about our local media work. In the last few years, we've been working hard to promote and explain the impacts on certain communities of, wastewater infrastructure that's failing, drinking water infrastructure that's failing. We've done this through a lot of promotion of our work, our funding work, and our regulatory work in the SAFER program. We've put out about 30 press releases in the last 3 years, almost one per month, about developments and work in that program. But we've also tried to mainstream this topic into everything we do, including, for instance, the San Gabriel trash TMDL that was mentioned, the UST cleanup work that's going on. In fact, there was a really good piece by in Bay Area media yesterday, ABC Bay Area, about that, with interviews with our staff. So we try to mainstream these topics of real concern for these communities everywhere we can and really draw media attention to them. Local media, I'd like to say, the good news is that they're still around. They need some help, but they're still around and active, and I'd like to give you an example. So in order to help facilitate coverage now, it does take a little bit more packaging, a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, a little bit more outreach, because newsrooms are notoriously don't have as much staff as they used to. However, when we do reach out, we do find that we do get responses, and so it's worth the effort. In one case, in particular, we had the Modesto Bee come to us. Kathleen Quinn, a reporter from the Modesto Bee, was looking at impacts on domestic wells in a portion of Stanislaus County. And she came to us, we gave her, interviews about domestic wells and our work there involved in that, but she also really needed data. We didn't have the data, but let's just say the data was adjacent to us. We worked very hard to help her get that data. She needed it for her article, and we did facilitate that, and it took some doing. She published in March an article about domestic wells in Stanislaus County and domestic well and water quality impacts. And we just received a invite last week that she, the Modesto Bee, and the Merced Star are going to be putting together some drinking water forums in June for residents who have concerns about water quality impacts to their domestic wells. They've reached out to the county, they've reached out to Valley Water Collaborative, and they've reached out to us. So I just want to say that as an example of helping them help us do our work. And I think the local media is very much still a partner, and we're going to do our bit as a communications office to continue to facilitate that relationship. Overall, in the last few years, we've added about 53 reporters to our press lists. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carpenter.
Next slide, please.
I forgot about my second slide. This is some social media that we've done just, on our work and especially on the trip walking to the Altadena systems last year. So thank you. Sorry.
Great, thank you. And then next slide, please. Great, I will pass it to Selena Dolores from Office of Enforcement.
Hi. Hello, board members. My name is Selena Dolores from Office of Enforcement. Our slide has been consolidated and it's different, but that's okay. So for the first bullet, it's talking about coordination with Cal EPA's boards, departments, and offices. And what coordinated means is I'm participating in IVEN meetings, and I'm representing the water boards on an environmental justice task force. And we are hearing the concerns directly from the community. So I get the privilege of actually hearing directly from community members and hearing their stories and translating them and getting them connected to the information they're looking for and working with other BDOs on sometimes multi-agency inspections and enforcement action follow-up. We entered into a memorandum of understanding with US EPA, Cal EPA, and other agencies and participate in collaborative meetings to address community impacts in metal shredding operations in West Oakland. I'll be there tomorrow evening till about 9 p.m. at a community meeting with my task force partners. We also provide direct access to Cal EPA's complaint tracking system, identifying ways to optimize complaint reporting and processing procedures to improve transparency and responsiveness to all communities. I know you've heard from people coming and saying, I submitted a complaint, I didn't get a response. So addressing those issues and figuring out what went wrong and figuring how to better address that responsiveness.
Thank you incredibly, Ms. Dolores. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Next slide, please. Great. So I will be presenting on the Office of Sustainable Groundwater Management and the implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act through that office. We have the pleasure of partnering with the Office of Sustainable Groundwater Management through their robust public engagement and language access services that they provide for all of their public meetings and decision-making. So within 2025, the Office of Sustainable Groundwater Management increased its media coverage through the help of Jackie Carpenter here of groundwater issues by Spanish-speaking media. They conducted outreach and engagement for multiple probationary groundwater basins, including Kern, Chowchilla, and Cahuilla. And they conducted outreach for probationary hearings with interpretation services, plain language materials, and remote community participation. One thing I wanted to highlight that there just isn't enough room on the slide for is that, while Spanish is kind of an obvious language for us to do translation and interpretation in, we also were able to see that in many of these basins, Punjabi and other languages are also really prevalent, and wanted to make sure that we could reach those folks as best as possible. So very frequently, if not always, we have kind of a trilingual set up for these meetings and probationary hearings with Spanish, Punjabi, and English. And then ongoing, staff will continue to expand that multilingual approach and the resources for public and people reporting their groundwater extractions to the board. And they will continue to develop and implement equity-centered engagement plans for each of the basins that come to the water boards. Additionally, they just started rolling out the GEARS system for reporting and held several workshops in person in the Central Valley with multilingual support to help folks do their reporting on time. And that was really just in the last month. So not part of the 2025 action plan, but part of their ongoing work. Next slide, please.
I will be presenting for the Division of Administrative Services. So in 2025, they participated in 34 job fairs, and outstanding work is to expand the recruitment efforts to Black, Indigenous people and communities of color candidates by broadening the outreach channels. And they will present on mentorship program to the Cal EPA, Latino, Latinx, Latine, Unidos affinity group this year. I think, though, what I really want to highlight here is the fact that we had this recruitment unit established in 2019, and there was a lot to be learned, and there still is. And there's two people who are in charge of the recruitment, and they serve as really the representatives of all of the technical, the work, the division work that we do here. And so, and the Division of Administrative Services is actively trying to connect with me, quite frankly, the Workforce Equity Inclusion Program, so we can really begin to understand how we get to more depth instead of breadth 34 job fairs is incredible, but it'd be okay if we just did 20 if we had deeper conversations and far more technical conversations around the recruitment. So there's a lot to be done here and a lot that has already been done. Next slide, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm James Nachbauer, the Director of the Office of Research, Planning, and Performance. And in 2025, we worked on our equity training program. As you know, the Water Boards has a very robust and dynamic training function. And we're constantly both curating our online courses and also working to pilot new in-person courses or online instructor-led courses where we're trying to figure out the course topics that work best, the instructors that work best, the marketing approaches that work best. And so 2025 was a year of a lot of lessons learned for us and, attempts and ongoing efforts to try to figure out what's most needed and what is best received. There's been some interesting conversations around kind of moving past like basics of equity and trying to figure out how to provide the kinds of courses that the workforce now needs. In terms of our next bullet here, the Water Board strategic work plan, I want to point out that while the board adopted or heard about the strategic work plan in 2026, this work did start in 2025. I think two of our structural changes in the 2026 work plan serve to help us highlight equity work. One was the creation of the new programmatic priorities. That includes in the 2026 plan SAFER, SIGMA, and financial assistance, and also the core workload component of the annual strategic work plan. And that's a place where a lot of different programs were able to mention equity-related work that otherwise probably wouldn't have been mentioned in the strategic work plan itself, given how high level that document is. We continue to work on climate change and hopefully more to come this year.
Next slide, please.
Hello, board members. My name is Christopher Marquis. I am the Public Engagement Environmental Justice Specialist in OPEDA. For the big picture of our office, we have 3 pillars. That is the Public Engagement and Environmental Justice Program, the Tribal Affairs Program, and the Workforce Equity and Inclusion Program. Within 2025, there were a number of accomplishments we'd like to highlight. We co-hosted the Tribal GIS Summit, collaborated with OWEMA on the Equity Data Handbook, and we're collaborating with the regions, divisions, and offices on domestic wells and outreach and coordination. As part of ongoing efforts, OPEDA will continue to update public comment web pages, continue to develop and refine the Public Engagement and Environmental Justice Manual, and continue engagement with regions, divisions, and offices to sustain and improve workplace culture. Next slide, please.
Sorry, thank you. So 2 recent Assembly bills, Assembly Bill 2454 and Assembly Bill 664, established requirements for property owners with domestic wells that serve renters. And so OPEDA was able to have a position created within our office to help coordination among all of our domestic well programs, including the CV Salts program, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, as well as the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience, Safer Drinking Water Program, and many others. So we have a role there in coordinating among all of those programs and communities to help specifically renters that use domestic wells to have their well water tested. And part of that involved putting up a website and resources to showcase well testing programs that the bills point to that folks can take advantage of. And further, we're doing a lot of collaboration with the Office of Enforcement and the California Department of Justice in terms of enforcing and providing compliance assistance for those bills. I want to say compliance assistance is our first goal. So it can be very scary sometimes for communities to hear from the Office of Enforcement or from, individual homeowners to hear from the Department of Justice. And so our role there is we want to make sure that we are informing and educating people first, assisting with compliance, and then where needed, bringing in that enforcement piece. So those have been great partners, and they're also working toward that goal of compliance assistance before enforcement as well. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it to Nathan Blacksmith.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. Nathan Blacksmith. I'm the Tribal Affairs Program Manager with the Office of Public Engagement, Equity, and Tribal Affairs. One of our accomplishments for in this area is we have established a tribal consultation dashboard that provides transparency and tracks government-to-government consultations, ensuring meaningful engagement with Native American tribes. And so this serves as just another resource aside from the notification letters and other correspondence that we have around opportunities for government-to-government consultation, and conveniently displays it on a dashboard on one of our tribal affairs websites. And so we're very happy with this new tool, and are speaking with tribes and engagement opportunities, driving them here. So if they have any questions regarding opportunities or details, they can come right here and check it all out for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blacksmith.
Next slide, please. And for this, I'll pass it to our Chief Deputy Director, Karen Mogus.
Thanks, Amy. This last summer, we launched a couple of open houses, held 2 of them last year, to invite all staff to come and have pastries and fruit and coffee and enjoy an in-person time to collaborate and chat with colleagues in an informal venue. And it was very well attended. I enjoyed talking to a lot of people that I hadn't talked to or seen in a long time. So they were really well received. At the December open house, inspired by the brainchild of our own Chair Esquivel, we launched the inaugural Golden Bear Awards. What is a golden bear? They're also known as tardigrades. They're microscopic bioindicators of a stable, oxygen-rich activated sludge in a wastewater treatment plant. In nature, they also survive in very extreme conditions. And the Golden Bear Award was established to recognize tardigrade traits in our workforce. Nominations were solicited from anyone across the organization here at the State Board to recognize the traits of resilience under pressure, adaptability, humility and quiet strength, endurance through change and resourcefulness. And you'll see here the 7 awardees for 2025. And we plan to do this again next year and hope that Chair Esquivel will also print a number of the awards for us again this year. So it was very fun, and I look forward to the next one, which will be scheduled in, our next open house is scheduled in August. Slide, I guess. I don't know what's next.
Next slide, please. Thank you. What is equity if not a Golden Bear Award? That was the most interesting, lovely thing I ever saw. Okay, so some of the themes from 2025, we know that we've expanded and continue to expand in meaningful engagement, using racial equity tools in decision-making early on, not something that's an afterthought, is very important. Advancing equitable outcomes in the existing programs, improving coordination and alignment, and fostering workplace equity and inclusion. And so the national climate around equity, inclusion, and environmental justice have completely shifted. And this work will no longer have the same support and mutual symbiotic dynamic around equity work with our federal partners at the US EPA. But we are here and we are continuing on. In 2025, we saw some of the same themes as 2024 and 2023. We continue to improve our coordination and alignment between projects. We're building internal capacity for advancing racial equity through training like you heard, creating forums for discussions around racial equity, and creating guidance for using racial equity tools. Thinking critically if processes, pardon me, are equitable to advance outcomes that benefit everyone in existing programs. Staff recognize that while many actions are complete, we see them, at least in our report, as complete. Meaning the deliverable was produced, there's still a long journey ahead. And what we really aim to do is recognize what is the criteria for sustainability of all these actions that we've taken so far and that we plan to take in the future. And as we continue on with this journey, our understanding of what equity is and what it could look like at the water board's workplace continues to grow deeper. As I was speaking, the depth versus the breadth. I know it can sound very scary at times like these to talk about any sort of elimination or subtraction, but truly we're talking about adding. We're talking about adding a lot of substance to what we already do. And what we'll continue to do as we wrap up this 2023-2025 Racial Equity Action Plan. And so, last year I sat before you all and I said to myself this year, Chair Esquivel and board members, that I am not going to do that again, of all that crying that I did. So I was like, don't go off script. But that's just not my style. And I've contemplated while everybody was presenting what I would say about the themes of 2025. I'm going to do it this time. Okay. Okay. Oh, God. Okay. And I don't mind crying. I do want to be audible. Oh, shoot. Oh, okay. And this is public, so I don't want people to think that the workforce equity advisor is a crybaby. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, thank you, Board Member Morgan, for starting off with lived experience. I think it's important to note that we know this work is hard, but it's becoming almost impossible. The resources are stifled, strapped, eliminated. My program is eager. I'm very enthusiastic, but overburdened. The themes of 2025 that can't be in that slide. I was so excited when I sat before you on March 5th, 2025. I really meant everything I said. I wanted to create a workforce equity and inclusion plan, and I still plan to. I was really excited in March to sit before you and talk about the workforce equity inclusion plan. Unfortunately, by the time I kicked off the beginning of what I thought would be the workforce equity plan and the advancing racial equity cohort, our third cohort, we were going to begin training for trainers in September. But the reality is that, like I said, we don't have a lot of people nor resources to do this work. And so unfortunately, when I was called to do the duty of being a daughter, for a dying father, nobody else could do it. And so I want you all to know that the themes of 2025 stand as they are. But it's most important to know that the person who I'm really thankful that you gifted me to do this work, but we don't have the program that we need to move it forward. And if I leave, I wanted to keep going. And what 2025 did show me is that that doesn't really happen.
Thank you, Veronica. Next slide. Okay. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and for your words and your commitment to this work. I just want to say that. And with that, we have spoken a lot about the importance of data, information, communication, relating and interacting with folks. And that is how we do this work with limited resources. And so one of the things that we have incorporated in the last couple of years is this interactive report. It's a dashboard on our website. And so folks that are really interested in what work we're accomplishing can go on this dashboard, interact with it, click on a division or office, click on a particular action, and see the status of it in real time. So we have a lot of graphs and a lot of text here up on the screen. It's really hard to display a 3D interactive dashboard and a 2D slide. But I do encourage folks to check that out on our website. It's in both English and Spanish, and is comprehensive of the entire three-year term for the Racial Equity Action Plan. We plan to continue this kind of display of information as we move forward with our next iteration of the Racial Equity Action Plan, and are really grateful to our partners at the Office of Information Management and Analysis, as well as our equity data specialist, Megan Kung, for helping us display this information in a way that is hopefully meaningful to the folks that we serve. All right, next slide, please.
All right. The next iteration of the REAP, which we call informally REAP 2.0, will focus on transformation of equity impact analysis from pilot projects to programs, embedding equity into the decision process to sustain water board's capacity and continuing to build community trust. The next iteration of the REAP will be framed around changes and outcomes, integration of racial equity work into routine practices for water board staff, while deepening the impact of those actions the water boards already have in place. Next slide, please. REAP 2.0 public workshops will be a phased approach. Summer 2026 includes phase 1, which consists of in-person meetings at Cali, PA, and after-hours virtual workshops. Phase 2 provides updates on the draft, provides meaningful updates to the draft for comments collected from interested parties and organizations. And we have an anticipated adoption of early 2027. Thank you. Next slide, please. There are a few ways for contacting OPEDA and getting racial equity updates. Contact us via email at racialequity@waterboards.ca.gov. Subscribe to email notifications and follow us on the 4 platforms of social media. Lastly, if you are interested in providing comments outside of this board meeting or would like to request formal tribal consultation, you can contact staff at racialequity@waterboards.ca.gov. If you're interested in reading the 2025 annual update or staying informed of the Water Board's racial equity work, you can visit waterboards.ca.gov/racial_equity. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so this is our discussion and question section. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. If you would like to provide public comment, please fill out the virtual speaker card by scanning the QR on the screen. Please email board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov if you have any difficulties. Each commenter will be called upon to speak. Please inform our staff in advance if you require interpretation services. Thank you.
Just such an incredible amount of thanks and pride here across all of this work. We've come a long way since we first adopted, well, our human right to water resolution as was laid out, back in 2016, but really in 2021, the passage of our racial equity resolution. I think of where we are then. I think of the actions that we've been able to commit to and the momentum we have, and I know we still have a lot of work to do. Particularly, Veronica, just want to address you and thank you. Bringing our whole selves into this work comes with dangers insofar as it is a heavy burden, a heavy emotional burden and toll, knowing that we have a lot to live up to and always feeling as if we're not fully resourced to fully live up to our mission, let alone to this work sometimes. And it comes then with a lot of prioritization, I know, amongst us on what can we get done and how do we keep that momentum, knowing that it feels sometimes there's always that much more to do. And so just thank you for your personal leadership in this, and know that it doesn't come easy. This work is difficult, and we bring, again, our whole selves into it. And with it, know that folks carry a lot of burden in the work, and sometimes some folks a little disproportionately. And so just thank you for being such a leader internally with us here and for pushing us and continuing to make sure we live up to the words that we have on the paper with the actions and the outcomes ultimately in our communities that we're looking for. So, as we heard, and just thank you because being able to hear from all the divisions, I feel really shows the depth of the commitment from this institution to this work. And what I'm really proud in hearing, especially as the work has evolved, are the common threads between the divisions where the equity handbook and these foundational documents and work are spreading through the institution, and being a core foundation that all the divisions can work from. So it's that interstitial, support work between the divisions that I see growing and is really incredible to see. And as is then the work with our sister agencies, the number of moments that sister agencies or, think of the AG's office as well, have been mentioned, I think shows how we here in the state continue to know the importance of these values to ultimately attaining our missions. We're balancers up here. We can only balance if voices are empowered in communities to engage with us, to share with us their lived experiences, and is why even the data work is so important, because it allows us to see the communities for who they are and the challenges that they suffer. Absent that, we have just major blind spots. And so just thanks across the divisions here for all the work, and I look forward to the workshops because it is now time for that next chapter to understand where are we taking our work, how do we go from pilots, as was said, to more continued enduring commitments. We're in tough budget times, and so again, it is difficult across all of our work to feel that we aren't completely living up to everything we know we can do. But I know that the passion and the vision of all the leadership here within the boards is aligned, and so I think that's where it's continuing to make sure that folks not just see that we're doing this work, but that there are outcomes that ultimately people can have faith and pride in, and hopefully resource us a bit more to do even greater, because we know the need far outdoors our resources to accomplish all of this. So just thank you incredibly. I know we have a couple of commenters, but I want to look to fellow board colleagues for further comment or question at this point. And if not, we can go to our commenters. Let's first hear from Kaya Rivers, and then we followed by Eric Oriana.
Good morning.
Good morning. So good to see you.
Nice to see you. Good morning, Chair Esquivel and board members, and thank you for a really great informational item on the Racial Equity Action Plan and the progress the State Water Board is making to achieve your racial equity goals. In the Racial Equity Resolution, the board identifies that The SAFER program is a key piece to address environmental injustices and racial equity. However, despite this acknowledgement, the program itself is minimally highlighted in the board's racial equity action plan. We appreciate the board's efforts to incorporate a racial equity analysis into the annual drinking water needs assessment and the work to create a local workforce development pilot project through SAFER. However, at the same time, we encourage the board to include more concrete actions and metrics that are focused on incorporating the racial equity resolution into the implementation of SAFER, especially in the next iteration of the racial equity plan. We work alongside disadvantaged communities of color to secure long-term drinking water solutions. And these projects often involve connecting clusters of domestic wells to a larger public water system. This work is relational, and we often initiate this work with an understanding that each domestic well household could be seen as a unique water system with their own questions, concerns, and needs. Community engagement, therefore, in domestic well communities involves building social infrastructure amongst these households to find a common pathway toward a long-term solution. Building trust with individual households takes time. However, it is a critical component to advancing long-term solutions, as often social infrastructure can either support or hinder projects from advancing. Oftentimes, conducting outreach in these types of communities may take longer than anticipated. However, for true equity to be reached, we must understand these challenges and codify ways to support this into action. So we encourage the state board to include actions in the next racial equity action plan that ensure that the SAFER program leans into community and TA provider feedback, especially around outreach and engagement that is needed to get projects over the finish line. And we also asked the Water Board to begin the process to better align the goals in the racial equity action plan with the goals of the SAFER program to ensure that engagement is treated as a core program outcome rather than a conditional activity. Thank you so much again for the really great informational item and the work's continued commitment towards racial equity in the Water Board. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Ms. Rivers. I appreciate the recommendations and the continued partnership across all of this work. Really feel very fortunate that we have partners helping us implement, whether it's SAFER or other programs and communities in ways that live up to our values. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up Eric Oriana.
Thank you, Chairman and board members and staff. My name is Eric Oriana. I am with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I'm encouraged by Ms. Kai Rivers' words and appreciate the nuance she's brought to this discussion. I wanted to start off by thanking the board, Chair, your leadership, and just the group of staff that have been committed to this work for years. And this work started several years ago, and we're in a different time, but still with a lot of the same challenges. So I appreciate the commitment throughout these years to continue this important work when others have not had that same commitment. And I think that the commitment from this board is unique or especially prominent across, the government that we have here in the state. So thank you. I wanted to highlight really just some things that I think are going very well with some of the updates that we heard in regards to Sigma, in regards to the Division of Financial Assistance, a lot of great work from staff going on, and just appreciate the tangible dollars that are going to communities in terms of technical assistance, in terms of interim assistance, that are really making a difference in improving outcomes of safe drinking water for communities across this state. Also, more on the newer side, but AB 2454 work that OPITA is doing in terms of proactively outreaching to those who have requirements under this, requirements or rights under this new piece of legislation. And so just really want to commend that work that's going on because it's really important. and it makes a difference in the reality of Californians. And I have to always talk about the reality that residents in California live in and with. And so, this year I've had the privilege of working with residents across the Central Valley who really exemplify the like what makes this state a great state. And it's just been a privilege to work with them, to learn from their leadership. And I think it really, to me, it's so important to share what they're going through, to share that there's still a lot of work to be done in regards to ensuring that everyone has the human right to safe and clean drinking water. I work with residents who tell me about they don't want to drink the water because they're scared of what it will do to them. I work with residents who tell me that when they shower their children, that their children come out with rashes from the water. And so that tells me that there's still a long way to go to achieve racial equity in the state. And I think that we have to center those experiences, and that has to be the primary motivator for the work that we do to ensure that Californians have their rights honored. And I think that there's been a lot of these types of folks who have been helped because of this board's leadership, and there's still a lot more to go. And so, one of the things that I would encourage this board to do is in its use of mandatory consolidation orders. It's a very powerful tool, and a tool that can rectify or really achieve equity for a lot of Californians in this state. And I think that it's one that needs to be used prudently, but also I think more it needs to be used more across the state to ensure that residents are entitled and living with the rights that they deserve. So just encourage this board to continue the work that it's doing, to continue with its mission. These are honorable goals and just so important to achieving the dream that we have for this state. So thank you for this opportunity to share a comment, and appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time as well, Mr. Oriana, and your leadership here in the space. I really appreciate your words here. The continued support and the recommendations, the partnership means a lot. And just thank you for continuing to keep us accountable and being here with us around all this. Really appreciate those contributions. So thank you. All right, that wraps our commenters. Looking to my fellow board colleagues if they'd like to provide further word. Board Member Morgan.
I just want to thank everyone who provided an update today. It's great to hear all the work that's occurring throughout all of our board divisions and offices, because it really does take a village to implement this work. It's not on one person's shoulder. It is on all of ours. This work is either going to be successful with all of us working together to make it successful, or it will fail based on all of us. It really does take a village, and this is not just this is the beginning of implementing it. It should not be an afterthought. This should be work that is done every day. It is part of our work. When we look at our mission, equity is a part of it. It may not be spelled out, but it is for all Californians. And so, just want to again thank each board division and office for starting the implementation, and just want to remind and support each in continuing the work and making it part of the everyday work. And so, and Veronica, it really is that there is a village, and I appreciate your words. And it is hard when when the work does not continue, when in anyone's absence. And it is those times where we definitely feel a heavier burden and a heavier weight on our shoulders. just, know that, we're here to support you, find ways to keep the work moving, and with grace and understanding that times that works, it does slow down at times, but we will pick up the momentum and we will keep going. So please know that we are here to support you. We're here to support the work. And in the years that I have been here with the board, we have made huge strides. Do we have a long ways to go? Yes. But we have made huge strides in moving forward. And I am looking forward to being part of that journey to keep moving forward. So thank you for all that you do every day.
Thank you so much, Board Member. Vice Chair.
I really can't improve upon that. I just want to add my thanks as well. I too have seen a big change in the years that I've been here. I think it can be true at the same time that there's way more to do. There's not enough resources, and we are also seeing change. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all. I think that you're doing some of the hardest work because of the very issues that you pointed out. The burden that you feel and the intense emotion and life experience that you bring to your work. So thank you so much for it, and let's keep going.
Here. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Board Member Firestone.
Yeah, so echo the words that have already been said. I'll just add some. I want to start with acknowledging the and reiterating some of the amazing accomplishments that were highlighted today. Some of the things I'm most proud of over the past few years are one, that we have 181 systems that have been stuck in a cycle of not having access to safe drinking water for decades in many cases, have safe drinking water in their taps in a sustainable way for the first time, or at least since, and that's since starting the SAFER program. It's not just one division. It is many divisions, and I think a real example of how this is not just integrated into our work, but making our state stronger for everybody and making sure we're not leaving folks behind. That's 800,000 Californians that have safe drinking water for the first time in their homes and schools that didn't for decades. So I'll just I'm also really grateful for and excited for the cleanup and abatement pilot for I think it's a real opportunity to put some resources towards giving communities and tribes funding for their leadership in getting outcomes in their communities. And I'm just really hopeful that that is a pilot that can help us as an institution look at how maybe we can better steward kind of SEPs and penalty money as one component of the cleanup and abatement account in the future. So those are two. Another, I think, overall themes for me, I have seen so much investment and improvement. As a board member, information's brought to us, and we need to balance a lot of things and make decisions. And in order to make decisions, we need information. And one of the things we weren't getting early on was an understanding of how our decisions may have disparate impacts especially on different types of communities, but especially Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. And just the analysis and meaningful engagement that the skills within the board has increased so much over the past few years. And that, I think, allows us to have just a much more meaningful understanding of the decisions that we're making, and it leads to better decision making. And again, better outcomes for all Californians. I agree with some of the slides is, while we've built a lot in that area, I think there's a lot more to do to really integrate those tools within all of our work across the water boards and make that much more of a routine and meaningful and kind of early integrated part of developing proposals and bringing and supporting board decision making. Just, that's already highlighted here as kind of the next steps, and I think is exciting as we look forward. And I also appreciate folks touching on, we've not only, the first round, we set goals, and we set goals that helped us start. And some of them were more ambitious than others. And we were successful overall. But I appreciate that we highlighted a lot of areas that we went beyond the goals we set for ourselves. And there were very real outcomes and steps taken that are far beyond the goals that we set. I particularly just want to call out some of those that were in Division of Water Rights, because I think especially the tribal engagement, tribal beneficial use work, TEK, a lot of that was maybe not, I think we went rightfully beyond where we had set goals, and we have more to do on that, but I feel like there's real momentum in that area, and I just hope that we can, as we go into this next phase of 2.0, that we can be a little bit more ambitious in some of the goal setting in some of the areas where we were really just starting and kind of getting a feel. I think that actually, the last thing I want to end on, because as a board member, we don't focus as much or see as much of the workforce work. It's actually one of my favorite parts is when we have staff recognition awards, because I see so much of staff that otherwise, as a board member, that otherwise I don't see. I otherwise see, kind of upper layer of leadership that and not the everyday folks that are doing this work. But I do think it's an area that at the water boards, we, going into the racial equity resolution and action plan process, we identified as an area that we do really need to strengthen diversity in our staff on a whole bunch of levels, including very much lived experiences and reflecting the communities that we serve. It makes our work stronger. It's not an add-on. It's vital to us being effective as an organization. And I think there's a lot more we need to do in terms of investing and embedding that work and that commitment within our, throughout the organization, but especially as we look at, I think when we saw some of the data analysis that had been done, especially in higher leadership levels within the organization. I know there's a commitment to that, but I also think that it's important for us to be honest and reflect that we don't have the resources that we would ideally like to have, and that if we are committed as an organization, and we are, that we need to make sure that isn't on one person, and that isn't something that stops because of one person. And I think as we all, I just want to reiterate as a board member, and I've heard this from my other board members as well, but throughout the, as we have check-ins quarterly, that this workforce diversity, equity, and inclusion of folks belonging in this organization, and not just belonging, but bringing their strengths, is a top board priority that needs to be integrated into the work that we do. And it's not, we don't have resources to hire everyone that we need to bring everything that we want to do, but we make do throughout our programs with the people and resources that we have, and we can do better, I think, as an organization in how we're bringing focus and priority to this work around diversity, equity, inclusion within the workforce. I think this board has been, and the organization, this has been a tough year for lots of different reasons on the organization. We have a lot of pressure on really big decisions policy-wise that we're making. And so sometimes things without attention get, don't move forward as much as they need to. And I just think it's helpful for us to use this time to reiterate as a board that that's important. It is a priority, and I know executive leadership hears that and agrees and is working hard in that as we're just continuing to learn and reflect as an organization and continue to improve. So thank you so much. I really am so proud, and I'm proud to be part of this organization and this effort, and to see how much has been accomplished, and to look forward to how much more there is to come.
You're here. Thank you, Board Member McGuire.
Yes, I'll just pile on with the thanks. I think there's very little I can add here, except for the fact that I've been learning a lot, and it's really hard to believe actually how long it's been since we adopted the resolution, and that we're 3 years into the Racial Equity Action Plan now at this point. But I think this really is an important moment to sit back and take a look at where we are. And I got to say, when the Racial Equity Action Plan was first developed, I was a little skeptical because it seemed very ambitious. It seemed like there were just so many different actions and initiatives in that plan. I did not know how we were going to make a lot of progress on it, to be honest. And sitting here today, hearing your report, actually you have. By and large, you've been incredibly successful, overwhelmingly successful, even with the limited resources that you have, that I know most of you have other jobs and responsibilities that most of your time is dedicated to. And yet, we can still sit here and celebrate the progress that we've made to date. And I also want to say that I think about California as a progressive leader in environmental policy. We really do carry a torch for the world in that, and we still do to this day. And I was thinking about Eric Oriana's comments about how our agency and this board stands apart. And that really does resonate with me. And I think, and that holds true fully for the racial equity action work. You are leaders in the state, and I think globally on this. So thank you for that. And please keep going. I'm looking forward to the 2.0 version, and just echo my board colleagues' comments about how we can do more, even if it seems like a big lift at this moment.
Thank you so much, Board Member. Plus up all the comments here from the dais. There's a firm commitment you hear from us here around this work. And Board Member McGuire, and as others have noted, we're, whether it's our SAFER program and our focus on drinking water, whether it's a wastewater needs assessment, and importantly, our racial equity action plan and the resolution here, there's no other state in the nation that has that set of tools and discussions and data and focus on communities and bridging the equity challenges within this state, and incredibly proud of that. As Board Member McGuire said, you're all leaders here in this space, and I think that's what makes it even more difficult oftentimes, because there isn't anything we can take off a shelf and just you kind of run with. We are actively co-creating the tools and the discussion and learning ourselves how best to be effective in all of this work. And again, it comes, and the range is from the personal to the societal here, and the interconnection therein. So just thank you for the continued perseverance. Look forward to the workshops here as we now contemplate this next chapter of the work. But can't appreciate you all enough for everything you're doing here within the space. Any thoughts from you all and reflection? Would love to hear back from you as well a bit here, as much as we've, I know, been speaking. So just thank you.
Just gratitude for all that you all have expressed, and each of the individual attitudes and sentiments that you've expressed. It really helps to hear from all of you individually and what this work means to you. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge and thank our director, Adriana Renteria. They are the fearless leader in this space that, really champions this work, champions us that work for them, and moves this work forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Adriana as well.
Here, here, completely plus that up.
Thank you all. I've gotten it together. But thank you all so much for everything that you've said. And I just do want to echo, because I was like, what did I just say? Because when you're crying, like, I really don't know what I said. But I came to the water boards not knowing what the water boards truly was. And I didn't know anything about water science. And now I do. And I think it's because the people here are so passionate and they teach in ways that makes it really fun to learn. And as a health scientist, I've been able to really grab on and understand, how do I take what we're talking about in equity and make it something that is applied to engineering and an environment. And so, like, talking about groundswell and civil engineering and building bridges, all parts that I want to translate into actual equity practices. And I do want to echo that I think that the water boards is amazing. I think that you all have incredible leaders here. I'm really honored to be considered one of them, but really what folks do at all levels, like, there's leadership in what we consider rank and file, as well as our executives. And so when I speak to anything of saying, like, I'm doing it by myself, I'm speaking very specifically to the workforce equity program. But overall, I find that we are so motivated, and I'm really proud to see what happens in 10 years, and we can say, we tried everything, and we'll know what works for other people to follow us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. All right. Well, look forward to what will be further updates on this discussion for sure. Really appreciate everyone's contributions. And let's go and give ourselves a 15-minute break as we then transition to our next item. Moment to reflect and have a moment to really contemplate on everything we've heard here. So just thank you. And so we'll bring ourselves back. Let's go ahead and bring ourselves back at 11:30, and then we'll start in our next item. Thank you so much for this morning so much. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're at 11:33. Appreciate it. We can get back to our board business here. Our next item, item number 4, is a workshop on the 2026-27 Clean Water State Revolving Fund Intended Use Plan. It's that time of year. I'd like to hand things off over to folks here on the panel. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Esquivel and members of the board. Very excited to be back again with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Draft Intended Use Plan. I'm joined by Lisa Hong and Bridget Chase, and from Office of Chief Counsel, Matt Wilson. So be helping present here today. And I was going to kick it off just with a little bit of a recap. Sorry, next slide, please. We'll start off with a little bit of a recap of this past year, which we are still in, but we're planning on finishing strong. Then we will go into some of the financial outlook for this upcoming fiscal year, and then get into the specifics about what the intended use plan is covering in terms of eligibility, grant limits, and the plan for this intended use plan. Next slide, please. If you look at the very end of our long intended use plan, we do have funding goals and wanted to touch on that briefly. Some of the 4 main areas that we talk about in the intended use plan. So one of those is funding commitments, and that's how fully are we utilizing the funds we have now. Most of the funds we have some sort of time frame or expiration appropriation date that we must use them in, so that timeliness is extremely important. Second kind of overall goal is supporting those projects that we've already made commitments to, and that's supporting projects through completion and all the way through repayment when we're talking about 20-year or 30-year loans. And so that's ongoing technical and administrative support, not only on a project level, but a program level when we're talking about our revenue bond program, the surveillance and monitoring that it takes to run that robust program. 3 is aligning with board policy priorities. One thing we saw this past year, technically slightly before this past fiscal year, we did in May 2025 policy amendments to both the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and Clean Water State Revolving Fund. But this year was really implementing those policy amendments in the form of the changed scoring criteria for the Clean Water SRF, as well as some other tweaks when we're talking about how we begin repayment for loans, when we start that, combining with construction completion, and just kind of that monitoring of those construction agreements. And then finally, we do have performance metrics, and we break it down into some details around how long do we want it to take to complete our environmental review or to draft an agreement. Obviously, that is, it takes 2 to tango with getting these funding agreements done. So we really try to focus on how responsive we can be as staff while also establishing expectations for the applicants and recipients. Along with that is the types of programmatic requirements. Those can come from the legislature and the Budget Act. They can come from EPA, the federal statutes. And so complying with all of that is, as you know, one of the key things that we do in Division of Financial Assistance, keeping all those requirements straight, trying to make it as easy as possible on the recipients to comply, help us comply. We help them comply. Next slide, please. So we're not quite there yet, but June 30 will be the end of the 25-26 fiscal year. And so the parentheses shows some of those agreements and dollar amounts that we are currently, we call it routing. The drafts are being prepared, the agreements are being issued. They're not quite executed, but we think they could be executed by June 30th. So we're expecting about 40 agreements this year, for almost $1 billion. And we're talking about small community wastewater grants, loans for the medium and large communities, and also water recycling projects make up a big portion of those commitments. One of the things I wanted to point out for the water recycling, the majority of that funding is Prop 4 funding. We did emergency regulations to try to get that money moving as quickly as possible. We expect to commit all of the money we had for the 25-26 year this fiscal year. So that's been a big accomplishment of the team. Really happy with that.
That's huge.
Next slide, please. We really like to focus on new money and new projects, but we've got a huge amount of ongoing projects that really should be our primary focus, making sure that those get to completion and finish strong. So wanted to highlight, this year, talking about 40 amendments for those projects that needed time extensions, maybe an increase in funding that's still within the delegated authority and grant limitations of the IUPs. And then for these active projects, either planning or construction, those planning projects are preparing those deliverables. We're working with them to review those environmental documents, those engineering reports. And then those in construction are needing active disbursements because most communities don't have that cash on hand to maintain that level of cash. These are the biggest projects the community has done in many cases in years. And then even beyond those active projects that are ongoing, we are talking about over 300 agreements that are in repayment. And so that is the key to our leveraging of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Those are our pledged repayments that allow us to go borrow, take on debt, and get more cash now to invest in projects earlier to address those water quality issues as early as possible and get those dollars revolving more quickly. So that is a key element, and unfortunately can be a lot of work as well. Next slide, please. All right, last piece I just wanted to end on because we just had United States Environmental Protection Agency out a couple weeks ago doing our annual performance evaluation. This is actually going back in time because it's for the 24-25 fiscal year. But it was a great experience. No findings on our projects and our review. And wanted to demonstrate some of the ways that EPA measures the SRF program. So one of those is, they call it PACE, or kind of fund utilization. So one of those measurements is, the Congress is approving funds, these allotments are coming to the states. How quickly are you turning those grant dollars into new commitments? And so the goal would be turning 100% of those of those capitalization grants into new commitments. And so that's something that we did that year. We turned more than 100% of it into new commitments, and that's because of the repayments and the strength of the program. And so this is just a snapshot of this 24-25 year, but we're consistently in that top 5, 6 for states, and just the ability to commit those funds quickly. I was also going to mention, ongoing funding requirements. We work with Department of Finance, who does audits for a number of the funding programs that we administer. So, for example, this year, I think there were about 10 project-specific audits that Department of Finance did. So DFA takes the lead with that, conjunction with Division of Administrative Services to monitor, make sure that all the funds are being spent appropriately and do that coordination. So between the audit that we do for our own program that we hire, in addition to the EPA audit, DOF audits, plenty of audits in DFA, but continue to be in really good shape, very minimal findings.
Yeah, and really appreciate all those audits. Given the volume here that we're talking about of funding, just incredibly proud that never have an instance here of waste, fraud, or abuse happening, and all of these dollars are really going to benefit communities ultimately. So, and for the sake of friendly competition, wondering who's over to our left outdoing our fund utilization.
Chair Esquivel, I will say that the green bars are our fellow Region 9 states. So we're winning in Region 9. But yes, I am a little bit competitive too, and always have my eye on those states that are doing as well as us. Well, with that look back, we're going to switch gears and kind of focus on what's in the intended use plan this year as we look forward to the 26-27 fiscal year. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Hong to share that.
Great. Thank you, Mike, for the reflection. Next slide, please. And now we'll look forward about the financial outlook for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as what is in the proposed intended use plan. So the intended use plan is a required document for us to apply for and receive capitalization grant from US EPA each year. The Division of Financial Assistance also administers a number of other state funding sources through the intended use plan, including the ongoing Proposition 4 funds. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides are the financial outlooks. For fiscal year 2026, we're anticipating $252 million from EPA into the Clean Water SRF program, $52 million of which will be the base program. And the base program is the allocation that we have historically gotten each year. And then 184 of which are anticipated to be IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act appropriation. That's the general supplemental line that you see in the table there. Do want to note that 2026 will be the last year of IIJA. So moving forward, starting 2027, we're only expecting to receive base program appropriations. Also anticipating some funding on emerging contaminants, not very much, 16 million, and proposing to transfer that to drinking water SRF because of the lack of eligible projects on the clean water side. That being said, if applicable projects do materialize throughout the fiscal year, we can propose to transfer it back next year. Next slide, please. And this slide shows more of a financial outlook beyond the current year and kind of projects what the future might look like. So over the last few years, our capitalization grant with the base program has been pretty heavily impacted by congressional earmarks. Congressional earmarks is when members of Congress specifically designate projects or entities to receive that funds instead of providing it to the state to administer. So we have been seeing reductions for as much as 50% or above. That impact has been largely masked by IIJA for the last 5 years. So as you can see, the yellow bar there, we're still looking like we're receiving a lot of funding, even though there has been significant earmarks. That's in the hatched green bar. So after 2026, by the time we're sitting in front of you next year for 2027, we're not expecting any IIJA funds anymore, and that will solely be base program, and we're going to feel the impacts of the earmarks much more significantly. Also want to note that for the earmarks, we're anticipating impacts to our principal forgiveness availability, and historically, principal forgiveness has gone out to our small disadvantaged communities.
For what it's worth, Congress had congressionally directed spending for water projects prior, but they were funded, fully funded onto their own. And so, we used to receive our capitalization grant, even during those times, fine. Once the earmarks went away, I think a lot of the institutional memory I know from the regions kind of went away to be able to get dollars out. But I think some of that institutional knowledge as to how these earmarks were carried out prior was also lost in Congress. And I think I'm hopeful that I know this isn't just an issue for us here in California. All of our other sister states are in the same boat. And I know there's a lot of effort to try to get Congress to really fix this, to not raid the base program if they desire congressionally directed spending, but just pay for it like they used to, so as to not have these impacts to our program. So for what it's worth, yeah, appreciate the focus on this.
Thank you. And we're mostly looking at federal funds here. We'll talk more about state appropriation with each funding program. But do want to mention that for state appropriation, what we're seeing now are largely Proposition 4 funds. And the May revise did come out last week, and with no changes to the funding programs in DFA. So all the projections that you'll see in the future slides are still accurate. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk about each funding program, starting with Clean Water SRF loans. Next slide. For the Clean Water SRF loan, the fundable list is on an annual cycle. So we start with all the projects and all the applications that we have in-house and put that into what we call a comprehensive list. And we have a funding target and a funding target range that we want to be in for our loan capacity to be sustainable. So we score all the projects that have a complete application, and we essentially rank them from the highest score to the lowest score. We'll go down the score until we hit our funding target range, and all the projects are above what we call the cutoff are what we're proposing to be added to the fundable list, and projects from the previous year's fundable list are either rolled over to this year or they're removed. And that's how fundable lists get developed and proposed. Next slide, please. Last year, the board did adopt an amended policy update, which we updated the scoring criteria for Clean Water SRF loans. And there have been questions last year about what the updated scoring criteria will do to the fundable list. So this year, our team did an analysis of what that might look like based on the project applications that we have. So the current slide you see are projects that would have been added to the fundable list based on the previous scoring system. The projects that would have been added are all in the big gray box there. Next slide, please. And under the current scoring system, we're actually seeing that with the new affordability consideration, we're able to add a couple of small dollar projects onto the fundable list and being able to help those small communities without bumping off one of those large projects that are still very important to California, which means our update is working as intended.
That's fantastic.
Next slide, please. For the actual proposal for loans this year, we looked at 5 different scenarios and recommending scenario D, a cutoff score of 13, which will add 10 projects. You may notice that the estimated loan amount is slightly higher than the funding target range we want to be in. And that is because we have to add enough new projects to take on the federal requirements, what we call equivalency projects. And those need to at least equal to the amount of federal cap grant that we're getting. And because we're still getting substantial federal cap grant this year, we need to add on enough new projects. And that's why we have to go down to a score of 13 here and recommending adding 10 new projects.
Not to forecast too much, but something tells me, next year's IUP then, may not have as many new projects, or there won't be as well, one, because of declining resources, but then also these requirements to be able to match basically.
I think that is true, though we will still aim to stay within the funding target range, which is, I think, between 500 and something and 750.
Okay. Well, great. Good.
Next slide, please. Now moving on to the proposal for the water recycling funding program. Next slide. So Proposition 4 allocated about $386 million to water recycling projects. We get that appropriation over a few years. As Mike has mentioned, $150 million has been committed to projects, and a huge shout out to Sunny, our senior, for the fantastic work that's been done there. You might remember from a couple years ago, there was general fund clawbacks, and there were a couple of water recycling projects that were impacted and that had their grant maximum reduced. So the $150 million was able to restore the grant maximum for those projects that were impacted, which was a decision made by the board at the time, is if we get additional funding, we will restore the grant maximum, as well as committing to new projects as well. And for the upcoming fiscal year, the proposed budget estimates $78 million in appropriation, and that's what's in the May revise as well. Next slide. This slide just shows the funding that's available for water recycling projects. What folks are the most interested in by far is the construction grant, which we anticipate to have $90 million available. There are some funds for feasibility study as well as construction loan available too. Next slide, please. For our proposal this year, we're proposing $15 million grant maximum per project, which is the same as last year. And for the large scale projects that are delivering over 10,000 acre feet or more each year, $15 million per phase, which is also the same as last year, though looking at a maximum of 2 phases per project or per program for this year. And that is more of a practical limitation because we only have $90 million available this year, which can fund up to 6 projects in total. And currently we already have 9 complete applications in-house. There have been questions of, hey, what if the board gets an influx of water recycling funding? Would that limitation still apply? The answer is no. If the board gets an influx in the future, aside from Prop 4, that would be a different year's intended use plan and a different consideration then. Also offering to create a pathway for planning and design only agreements. Historically, we have incentivized construction projects because ultimately we want projects to move towards construction. That is what generates recycled water to offset potable water use. However, we're hearing from a couple large scale projects that planning and design does take substantial effort, and there may not be any phases that are ready for construction. So we are proposing to create a pathway for planning design only, up to $5 million per project or per phase. Next slide, please. And with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Bridget Chase, to walk through stormwater and small community wastewater.
Great, thank you. So we don't have too much in the IUP about stormwater. We are proposing that there is $10 million that was put aside for projects in the current IUP, the 25-26. I'm like, what year is it? And we've got 2 projects moving to get those funding right now. So we're anticipating getting those. They probably won't get executed this fiscal year, but shortly into next fiscal year. So that $10 million is just rolling over from the current IUP to those projects. Separately, we have about $16.5 million available in federal funding, sewer overflow, and stormwater reuse municipal grants, or OSG is what we call it. So that could go towards planning or construction projects. But the big thing that we're focusing on for stormwater is Prop 4 funding, and that is not through this IUP. That's going to be coming to the board this either late this summer or I think we're thinking September that we'll take that to the board. So we'll be having draft guidelines posted soon for that, separate from this IUP. And continuing what we've done in previous years, we have a $1 million max for estuary projects listed as well. Next slide, please. Moving on to small community wastewater funding. Next slide. As Lisa mentioned, the majority of our our grant and principal forgiveness funding is for small community wastewater projects. This is a look at what we've funded the last 3 years in small community wastewater funding. So This bottom number is updated per what's in the IUP. We've already executed 17 agreements this year, and we have 6 more that we're anticipating moving along for a total of 378 million that we're anticipating getting executed. There is a $36 million loan component that's part of that. And then the remaining is all grant and principal forgiveness. That is kind of similar to what we did last year. We had the same amount of projects executed, 23, around the same amount of funding. We have seen project costs going up fairly significantly. You'll notice that from the year before, we had 17 projects go through for only 67 million. And in that IUP, we also didn't have a grant cap. We had lower cost per connection, but just historically, we're seeing project costs going up very, very significantly. So just flagging that there. Next slide, please.
On that, I do want to give thanks to DFA. I know we saw, the amendments, I think it was like 100 million and increased in the agreements, and just appreciate that you all have so much experience here and know that you need to keep a buffer in place for projects in order to get them across the finish line. So just a lot of thanks for just the good stewardship ultimately of the program and of these projects, so that we don't find ourselves in moments where we're not able to complete a project because costs have increased and we don't have anywhere to go in our program. So just thanks.
Yes, thank you. We do see that a lot after they go out to bid, they come back, and sometimes the cost could be significantly higher. This table here goes over the available funding that we have this fiscal year in the small community wastewater funding. So the majority of the funding this year is Clean Water State Revolving Fund principal forgiveness. We have almost 200 million available for that. There's a smaller chunk of the small community grant fund. We typically get 8 million each year appropriated that we could use from that. So there's a little bit remaining from last year. And then in addition, we've got Prop 4 funding. There's a little star by that Prop 4 because we do have a little bit more funding available in Prop 4, but we're proposing to put almost 17 million aside for technical assistance projects. You might wonder why 17 million, like where did we come up with that? We could use 10% of the Prop 4 funds for technical assistance. Last year, we didn't get to use the funds quick enough, so we didn't commit those funds to technical assistance. So we're kind of rolling over that available set aside to this year. That being said, if we don't have as much of a need for technical assistance, we could definitely commit that to other projects as well. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there and just say, especially given all the work we're doing on the wastewater needs assessment and that we don't typically have as much wastewater TA funding, just really appreciate that, that work and thought and intention. And I think we'll be needing to continue to build the TA program within wastewater. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, the next couple slides have to deal with the wastewater technical assistance that we have. So we have 5 different technical assistance agreements in place. We were able to amend these 2 agreements last year to increase the master agreements by just over 6 million. The overall amount that we have available on wastewater TA, let me look at my notes. I believe it's about 27 million available. And then go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So this is what we were able to do with that additional 6 million. We were able to get 3 new work plans in place, and then we were able to supplement 12 existing work plans. So with technical assistance, what we're able to do is a bunch of different things. It's essentially anything needed to get the project ready for a construction funding. So it might be outreach with the community, trying to get the community interested in whatever the project is, into raising rates. If it's septic to sewer, working with community to see about interest, that type of stuff. It also could do feasibility studies, environmental documents, rate studies, pretty much anything that's needed to get the project ready for construction. So we do also have planning grants available. The technical assistance that we've had has been kind of like supplemental to that. Definitely, as Board Member Firestone mentioned, we don't have as much on the wastewater side for technical assistance.
And we are hoping to kind of build up that program in the future. So, mentioning that $6 million, barely could tap into assisting more communities, just 3 new work plans and supplementing these. 17 million could do a lot. Next slide, please. All right, so getting back on the topic of projections. So this is what we're looking at for this fiscal year. The chart on the left-hand side in blue, it shows 264 million being available this fiscal year for small community wastewater projects. And then on the right-hand side, it has everything that is looking to tap into that money. So the very bottom orange spot, 95 million, is for complete priority applications that we have in-house that are on the fundable list. And then right above that is, I guess it's kind of like a brown, a burnt color. It's about 45 million that we're setting aside for potential cost increases for projects that we know are anticipating going out to bid this year and possibly will need that cost increase. The line above that, the 428 million, that's for incomplete priority applications. I guess I haven't talked about what priority is in small community wastewater funding. We've got 2 different types of projects listed in the IUP. We have priority projects, being projects that are addressing a violation or septic to sewer or a regionalization project. Everything else that's Clean Water SRF eligible, we have listed as secondary priority. So this 428 million is for incomplete priority applications. Then the line above that is for incomplete secondary applications. Then this green line on the top, it's potential loan need. This year's IUP, and I'll get into that in following slides, does propose that the secondary priority projects would have a loan component. So this would be assuming that they're going to take on that loan component. They may or may not. They could also choose to get funding elsewhere. Next slide, please. All right, moving on to what is proposed as far as funding criteria this year. This first graph is for planning grants. So last year, we only had priority projects. Again, those addressing a violation, septic, sewer, and regionalization projects were the only ones that were available to get the planning grants. But this year, we're proposing to open up planning grants so that any SRF eligible project is eligible. So secondary projects could potentially get that funding as well. We've got these 2 arrows up here that show the maximum grant per connection or per project limit. And so the top one, it shows that the project cap is going down. That's only because we currently don't have a cap for planning projects. The reason why we're proposing to add a cap right now is the drinking water side. I guess let me clear this up. Right now, the intended use plan says that we look at how much funding a community gets in a 5-year period. That includes planning, technical assistance, and construction costs. Last year, we removed the planning and technical assistance from that 5-year cap on the drinking water side, and we're proposing to do something similar on the wastewater side in this year's IUP. So because we're not rolling in the planning costs as far as the cap that they could get, we're proposing including a cap for the planning. 2.5 million. I will flag that, when we had a cap before in this program, it was 500,000. So it's another example of how we're seeing costs definitely escalating. The 500,000 below for secondary, that's kind of matching to what we saw previously as far as a cap for planning projects. We're proposing this one to be lower because we want to get things like the engineering report done, the environmental done, but not so much moving forward on the plans and specs because not so sure that those projects will be ready to move right away. So kind of getting them in a good spot to move forward, but not doing too much work that will not be used potentially. I do want to flag that in order to get construction funding, plans and specs do not need to be done. Those could be done under a construction agreement. So the thought would be if they do want to start the construction the next year, they could apply for construction funding and do plans and specs under that as well. Next slide, please. This is for construction grant and principal forgiveness eligibility. Pretty much everything is proposing to stay the same except for the grant caps, which, you know, we showed you a few projections already. The numbers are going down and they're going to continue to go down. We'll have some more projections a little bit later in this presentation to show what we're looking at as far as grant funding in the near future. Because of that, we are proposing to reduce the cap for priority projects, which are those addressing a violation subject to sewer or regionalization projects. This year's IUP currently has a $50 million cap. We're proposing to reduce that down to $30 million. And then secondary priorities, we're proposing to reduce that down to $25 million. Or I'm sorry, it's $25 million right now, and we're proposing to reduce it down to $7.5 million. The cost per connection would still be the same. And I just want to flag that as of now, at least that first cap, the $30 million, the projects that we are working on that are on our fundable list should fall within there based on the current estimates that we have. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass it back over to Mike then.
Thanks. Thanks, Bridget. So we really kind of want to split it up here because what Bridget was talking about was the grant maximums for this fiscal year for the 2026-27. And like she mentioned, we think that those are right-sized for the applications we've been working on for years that are coming together this year on our fundable list. Potentially for some of those incomplete applications that could get complete in the next few months. But we kind of wanted to give a warning for those that are not going to be complete until very late in the fiscal year or beyond. And so this kind of pairs with what we're proposing as far as those planning grant maximums. What is the message we're sharing with folks of what they can expect when they get through planning and they're coming to us expecting some robust funding. So Lisa also mentioned some of those federal projections. And so a huge portion of that non-repayable money, the grant and principal forgiveness, has been coming from the Clean Water SRF principal forgiveness the last 5 years. So what we've done here is we've split up the funding expectations that we think we might have available and the applications in-house on when we expect they could become complete. So it's a combination of technical assistance that is ongoing, planning grants that we've already committed to, and that work is going to be wrapping up, in addition to just straight up applications from communities and when we think those might be getting complete. So if you look at the 26-27 fiscal year, we're about right on what we think will be getting complete this year and the amount of funding we have available. Next slide, please. Basically the same slide, just kind of showing that funding gap. But when we look at the 27, 28, 28, 29, we're going to continue to see these planning efforts get complete, applications that are going to come in, and the amount of funding we have available just really is dropping off, right? So I didn't specify, but it's that small community grant, about $8 million a year. That's interest from the Clean Water SRF that we can turn into grants, and that's been essentially capped at about $8 million a year. And then a little bit of principal forgiveness and that little bit of Prop 4 that we're expecting the next couple years. So we don't normally put in, future grant maximums or, try to anticipate what the board might want to do in future IUPs, but we thought it was important to showcase those expectations because folks are going to be completing their planning work, and we're going to continue to need to, in future years, prioritize even within the priorities of that, the violation, septic to sewer regionalization. We don't anticipate there's enough funding with the current grant limits to provide full funding for those projects. And it's another big reason why we're really doubling down on partial grant for the secondary priorities, because the Clean Water SRF loan is a great sustainable source of funding that's heavily subsidized by us. And we've seen some great success this year. At least one community was able to get that rate increase they needed. And then in a combination of the grant funds and the Clean Water SRF loan could make that project work. So that's part of the message we wanted to share is if these are important projects for the community, we don't want folks to say, we're just going to wait until you can give us 100% grant next year when the forecast looks better, because we're anticipating the forecast will not be looking better. So we're here as resources to help walk communities through, what does it mean to afford a loan? What does that Prop 218 process look like? We have some of that expertise on things that communities have done, partnering with TA, and really making sure there's a path forward for these projects if it's an important project that needs a path forward. So wanted to share some of that in case it was a valuable discussion this year, but really, the meat of that discussion will probably be happening next year in the intended use plan. But folks that are getting complete this year, this is what they're going to be preparing for.
Really appreciate just the transparent, telecasting here of what it is we're facing. It's not lost on me. I know that we've been able to get out, over $12 billion since 2019, and it's because we've had bipartisan infrastructure law, good budget years, the SAFER program consistently funded, and weren't contending with half of our capitalization grant, kind of not materializing before us. So we find ourselves in a moment where we may actually have less funding than we did prior to the start of this, moment where we had such increases. And so thank you for being transparent and broadcasting this out. I look to our partners for their assistance and trying to ensure that the board continues to maintain at least historic levels of funding, let alone this increase we've seen these last years that have been able to do so much good in our communities. And we know still the need is great out there. So just thank you. I know it's a live discussion that I've had with a number of folks out there, and good to just have the data out there for everyone so that people can understand that now's the time to get in, because at this point doesn't look like the years ahead will be any better. So, yeah, board member. Oh, I was just making a quick comment, but if others want to make comment right now too, can. Okay.
Great. We won't have to wait long because I think my next slide is on the schedule. So just real quick, I was going to mention that the deadline to submit comments is May 27th, and then we hope to bring this back before the board for adoption on July 7th. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Downey. Board Member Morgan.
Thank you. And so really do appreciate the update. Just have a couple of questions. It does concern me with the decrease in funding, and it's really hard for me to hear, for small community wastewater systems to take out a loan. They can't. Their fees are extremely low and sometimes almost non-existent. And so, when I look at it, when an application comes in, there is a need for a project, and usually it is a great need. And, when we're looking at our wastewater infrastructure, it's underground infrastructure that no one looks at and usually doesn't want to talk about. And so when we're looking at that and the harm that it can occur to the environment and to public health, it is great. It is a harm that also can occur to our drinking water supply, our groundwater. And so, I really do, want to make sure that we are acknowledging that, and we are making sure that we understand what those projects are. And, understanding that, yeah, some of those do not have enforcement orders, but, it could be because of strained resources at our regional boards. Do you want to know something that I had seen in the draft of where if the secondary priority projects do not take out a loan, it was noted that the applications would be marked withdrawn. That's a great concern of mine because that is not us keeping understanding what is the need within California. With us now undertaking a wastewater needs assessment, I believe that it is imperative that we understand what the need is, and this is another resource of us helping to understand what that need is and to making sure that we're keeping track of that and we're feeding into the wastewater needs assessment and that we have that understanding. I understand where the funding is and we can only go so far, but the same thing on the drinking water side, it happens on the wastewater side. These may be secondary today, but they will be primary tomorrow. So I'm not for keeping that language in there, marking them withdrawn. I'm really begging for you to look at another system, another way to manage the workload internally to make sure that we are keeping track of these projects and we know where the communities are that do have a wastewater need, because this is really a public health crisis that is occurring. Also, I'm just noting that the small community wastewater program, it has been moved out of the Office of Sustainable Water Solutions. That is a great concern also. Now, while it's under excellent management, and I know that a lot of care is being taken with this group, it does belong in the Office of Water Sustainable Solution. There was legislation that was passed that stated that that created the office, that stated that drinking water and wastewater was there. We just had the racial equity update. This is part of equity, that the one place handles both for small communities. When I led the office, staff handled both. If a community came in and they had drinking water and wastewater needs, one staff person handled both projects. They had one point of contact. They talked to the community to understand what their whole concern was. Small communities cannot navigate our system, even with TA providers. Having multiple lines of points of contacts under different management is not the way to go. This is a huge step back. It is very disheartening to see this happening when we're talking about equity and we're talking about advancing equity and we're breaking down it internally. I cannot explain or express how dissatisfied I am with this reorganization that has occurred, that is not only against the legislation that formed the office for intent purpose of serving our small communities, our underserved, but it is also against everything that we stand for, than where we just had an equity conversation. And this is not bringing equity forward. So I really need to, I've asked for a briefing. I've received some information, but I still have not been made aware of why this was approved, why it was done, and what the thought was behind this. I really need to be briefed thoroughly on why this was allowed and how this is accepted when we have legislation that I believe we are not complying with. This needs to be corrected. That is it. I really do appreciate the work. Again, small community is under excellent leadership, excellent management. It's in the greatest of hands. However, this is a serious equity issue that needs to be rectified immediately.
Thank you, board member. Appreciate you elevating and flagging. Hadn't known that there was a restructuring on some of those programs are being handled. So thanks for bringing it up here at the board meeting. Board member McGuire.
Actually, I think I want to hear the public comments, and then I'll save any comments I have for after that.
That works. Thank you, board member. Looking to other colleagues in case they want to say further here before we hear from our few commenters. Let's go ahead and go to our commenters. First, we'd like to hear from Heidi Oriole, be followed by David Ken, and then Brenly McKenna. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. My name is Heidi Oriole, and I'm with the Sacramento Area Sewer District. And today I'd like to share Sac Sewer's support for the programs covered by the proposed IUP, which provide essential support for clean water and recycled water programs. Sac Sewer provides sewage collection, treatment, and resource recovery services to approximately 1.6 million people across the Sacramento region. And in previous years, the Clean Water SRF has provided critical low-interest financing for Sac Sewer's major Echo Water treatment project, and associated programs have provided grant funding for water recycling and septic-to-sewer conversion projects. We appreciate that support, and thanks to our strong partnership with the state, Sac Sewer recently completed construction of 4 community-wide septic-to-sewer projects. Those projects connected a total of 197 parcels in severely disadvantaged communities, including homes, local businesses, a public school, and a mobile home park. We look forward to continuing our successful partnership on future septic to sewer projects to help continue to protect waterways within the Sacramento region. And for the currently proposed IUP, we greatly appreciate staff's efforts to define the new large-scale water recycling opportunity that was created by Proposition 4, and to incorporate harvest water as one of the large-scale projects considered for water board funding plans and processes. Sac Sewer's Harvest Water Project is currently under construction, and it will soon become California's largest agricultural water reuse project, delivering up to 50,000 acre-feet per year of recycled water to existing agricultural and habitat lands. In March of this year, Sac Sewer submitted an application package to request consideration of funding for Phase 2 of Harvest Water, which is scheduled to begin construction later this year. We really appreciate the time that staff has taken to develop an approach to these large-scale projects, to meet with us to discuss how Harvest Water satisfies the intent of the Proposition 4 large-scale recycling program, and to review our application. And we understand that several projects, including Harvest Water Phase 2, are under consideration for proposed addition in an amended 26-27 IUP prior to your board's final adoption later this year. We support this approach, and we thank you for your consideration. So thank you again for your important funding support, which is both expanding sustainable water supply and transforming communities that need support, supporting agriculture, and also protecting our environment. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
And thank you for those comments and partnership, Ms. Oriole. Really appreciate the work of the sewer district here and the continued opportunity to fund the great work that you all are doing. So thank you. Much appreciation. Next, I'd like to call up David Ken and be followed by our last commenter, Brenly McKenna.
Good morning, board members.
Good to see you.
Chair
Good morning.
Diodamo, Chair Esquivel. My name is David Keene with the City of Chico, and I'm here today to support the intended use plan for 26-27, as well as champion the City of Chico Septic to Sewer Regionalization Project, which is now being considered on the fundable list. So thank you to staff for helping us navigate that process. Next slide. So the City of Chico is a small community located in Northern California within Butte County, home to Sierra Nevada Brewery, as well as the well-regarded Chico State University, but also home to thousands of septic systems still not connected to the regional sewer system. This has led to significant challenges within the community, which I'll talk about next. Next slide. So as part of the intended use plan, you have several priorities: addressing a violation, septic to sewer, and being a disadvantaged community. Chico meets all of those metrics, and therefore that's why we're here today, so to support the intended use plan. Next slide. So first, addressing a violation. Throughout the 90s, Chico experienced significant nitrate contamination in the groundwater, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board placed Prohibition Order 90-126 on the Chico urban area, which prohibits the installation of new septic systems. And the big one is, if you have a failed septic system and you're within 250 feet of the regional system, you are required to connect. That is quite a burden on the people, including if you're a disadvantaged member of the community. Next slide. So for our project, we've identified 5 communities in Chico. They're disadvantaged in the area here, as shown on the DAC map. Next slide, please. And this project is going to have a large impact. As you can see, there's 4 mobile home parks, one of which is age restricted, and the other one is a local community. And to put this into context, these are disadvantaged mobile home parks with failing septic systems within 250 feet of a regional sewer system. And they're failing. You know, we did some site visits, and you don't want to go there in the summer. There's smells and all those things. So The issue for me is I'm a city employee. These are private mobile home parks. So I'm here today to champion these members of our community and to regionalize them. Next slide. And so the Chico project meets all the current and draft eligibility criteria. Next slide. But like many communities, we are also facing both of the priorities. So we are on the fundable list listed as a priority septic to sewer, but we also are addressing a violation. And so we just here to champion the intended use plan in general and say your priorities are spot on. We categorize as septic to sewer, but we certainly could have fell into the other category. Next slide. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you as well. Really appreciate the leadership of the city of Chico and really looking in your backyard, if you will, and helping to connect these communities. That sort of partnership is what's critical for us to be able to achieve the human right to water and access to sanitation. So thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to call up Brenly McKenna.
Good afternoon. And thank you, Chair Esquivel and members of the board. My name is Brenly McKenna, and I serve as the Managing Director for Water Reuse California. We work with over 220 agencies and organizations throughout the state to advance the implementation of recycled water projects. And the Clean Water SRF program remains an essential and critical tool for funding these infrastructure projects. And I'd like to start off by first acknowledging and thanking you for the continued work of the Clean Water SRF Advisory Group. This has proven to be a really valuable forum for collaboration and engagement with stakeholders. And I was also very pleased to see the next round of Prop 4 funding that has been conditionally awarded in the intended use plan. At this time, we don't have specific comments on the SRF portion of the IUP itself. However, we are continuing to evaluate the updated scoring criteria, and that may have an effect on some of the recycled water projects that applied for funding. So we anticipate submitting some written comments for you in the future. But looking ahead, I really just wanted to say that we appreciate the opportunity to continue working collaboratively with the board and with staff. Thank you so much to DFA staff, Sunny and Mike. You've been an incredible partner for us. And we know that the years ahead will be challenging. And so we look forward to continuing to work with you all to hopefully find some creative solutions and see what we can do to improve California's critical infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Really appreciate your leadership, Ms. McKenna, and continued participation and engagement across all of this. It's really appreciated. The partnership is strong and it really helps us better accomplish our work here. So thank you.
Sure.
All right, that brings us to the end of our commenters and looking to board colleagues if there's any other discussion to be had here. Board Member McGuire.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm just in this mode of reflection and appreciation. And so I just want to thank you for all the good work that you've done. This is my 7th or 8th IUP experience. And I'll just say that along the way, there's always been this times of uncertainty. So a couple years ago, we're in a point of uncertainty about the SRF program, about potentially needing to take a pause to remain solvent with the program for the future. You were able to navigate that and work through it, and we didn't actually end up needing to do that. Likewise, I think about the recycled water grant program and how we've had changes in budget situations that have influenced the funding that we thought we had at one time for that, and really staying the course and maintaining contact with those projects that were once funded and being able to make them whole, I think is really, again, a commendable achievement because the needs out there are great for funding, and I'm just so appreciative of the team that we have here, that you all will be able to figure out as these challenges invariably pop up again in the future, that we'll find a path forward for them. And I was mostly reacting to the small community wastewater funding gap, and also having been tracking closely the wastewater needs assessment work, and they're not yet at the point of putting a dollar amount to the needs that they've identified, but I suspect it's going to grow that gap quite a bit. I think we all know that, and for better or worse, that project is going to give us information next year. So I think we're going to be coming into the next few fiscal years with a much greater understanding of just how big that gap is. So I do think it's going to be really critical to start having conversations soon about the priorities and if we should revisit them in some fashion. Because the other natural way to do this is what you've been doing, which is just keep lowering the cap down to help spread the number of projects out. But unfortunately, the trade-off there is there's a lot of good projects we can't fund. To your point about costs increasing, these septic to sewer projects are incredibly expensive. Unfortunately, they just are. And a lot of these wastewater treatment plant facility upgrades for aging infrastructure and violations are very expensive as well. So I think we're really going to just have to think carefully about what are the priorities and what kind of caps actually make sense for these small communities as we move forward. So I encourage you to do some outreach over the coming year, get some ideas and thoughts and suggestions from folks about how to best approach this challenge that we're coming up against. I know we'll find a way through it, but this is a good moment to reflect and think from an open-minded perspective about how best to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you, board member. Looking to other colleagues if there's any other comments. We are just at a workshop, so not seeing any though. Anything further to reflect on, Mr. Downey or folks?
Well, in danger of ending on a bad note, I will say that the projections were assuming continued SRF capitalization from the feds. This year, the president's budget proposed zeroing out the SRF. So even the meager amount of principal forgiveness we're hoping for after earmarks in future years, maybe that's too optimistic. So sorry to end on that, but I do think it hits home the uncertainty, and I do think that one of the strengths of the Clean Water SRF is the loan portion of the program. It was really a brilliant move back in the day to create the revolving fund, create that sustainable source of funding. And I did just want to say thanks to our stakeholders. I do think that the stakeholder advisory group has been a great place to hash out a lot of this. Taking your note, Board Member McGuire, about continuing to outreach and as we look forward, seeing where we can rely on the programs we do have that we know about, while also hopefully looking for other opportunities in the future.
You're here. Somewhat hopeful note, but realistic nonetheless. And it is ultimately about our partners and partnership out there. So just thank you for that. Really appreciate it. All right. Well, that wraps up item number 4 and workshop on the Clean Water SRF, and look forward to what I know will be a workshop on the drinking water side and then eventual passage. So thank you. Much appreciated. All right. We are now at item number 5, which is board member reports. And I will quickly pull up my phone so as I can see what exactly it is I have to report on. I'll note that I was fortunate to be on a panel on Wednesday the 6th during the Association of California Water Agencies conference. It was a panel around modernizing decision-making in the water space, some of the sort of streamlining discussions that folks I know are wanting to have out there. Really appreciated being able to share the space with Letitia Geithner, our moderator from the PPIC, Samantha Arthur, Deputy Secretary for Water over at the Resources Agency, And it was and then we were joined by someone from the federal side to talk about some of the federal streamlining work that had gone on prior. It was a good discussion, robust discussion, and really appreciated the space. And then the only other mention is just that last Thursday and Friday, we had our yearly Water Quality Coordinating Committee meeting. Really appreciate everyone that attended, all the regional board members, state board members, and importantly, folks that presented. It was a really robust discussion, got a lot of positive feedback from participants, and always a great moment to be able to meet with folks, but especially in this moment where we are in a period of transitions. So glad to be able to have been able to participate and pull that together. So much thanks. Looking to other fellow board colleagues. There are board member reports. Board member McGuire.
Yeah, so I also was at the Aqua Conference, and on Thursday, May 7th, I'll note that I was on the last panel of the conference, which happened after the governor made his remarks. So I found out who the truly dedicated Aqua Conference attendees were because they showed up. And so there were I was worried that I might be speaking to an empty room, but there were a few people there. And I think because it was on an important topic, which was on water affordability. And I was on a panel with Andrea Abergel with CMUA and Michael Claiborne with Leadership Council and professor from UC Riverside who had done some affordability study work for Metropolitan. And so it was a good discussion, and a lot of it for me was focused on system affordability of water systems and how the importance of our programs, of course, SAFER, et cetera, SRF, in supporting that level of affordability, and of course, success with arrearages and all the good things that we've done over the years, which you all well know. And then on May 15th, so just a few days ago, I was at the Bay Area Clean Water Agency's annual meeting. And gave a talk with those folks about regulator priorities for the year. I was on a panel with someone from the Air District and the US EPA and the regional board. So it was a good presentation and very well attended meeting. And certainly one of the main issues and focuses in that region is with the clean water agencies is nutrient management. And we're doing a lot of work there. So there was a robust conversation about what the progress they've made to date and where things are heading. So that's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, board member. Board member Firestone.
Yeah, I have two things to report. One was I moderated a panel on for the California Water Association around communicating during high stakes moments around health and trust for drinking water systems and customers. And it was great. The whole conference was really focused on communication and balancing, how to communicate effectively with customers and regulators during a host of high stakes situations, including emergencies and water quality and outages, but also thinking about how you're regularly communicating with customers around infrastructure investments and rates and trust, really, in terms of understanding what's in your drinking water and what people are doing to ensure it's safe. I also participated as on behalf of the chair in the first meeting of the Salton Sea Conservancy, and that was great. It was exciting to get that kicked off. Obviously, we'll hear from much more tomorrow on that, but it was great to go down there in person. And basically the Conservancy was created to help make sure there's an entity that can shepherd the continuation, operations, and maintenance and continued work that the Salton Sea Management Plan at CNRA is doing. And it also opens up some additional funding options. And there's a very large, diverse board, and I was part of it. So there's a member of the State Board, and then also someone from Cali, PA, that are both have seats on it, and many, many others that I won't list. But we will hear much more about all of that tomorrow.
Awesome. And thank you for serving in that capacity. And it definitely takes a village. It's a large conservancy, but definitely hear a lot tomorrow. But it's nice to see that evolution of the work and a deepening of it with now a conservancy. So that's great. All right, that brings us to the end of board member reports and brings us to the end of today's meeting. We will be in recess, though, because we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for our Salton Sea workshop. We will also be retiring into closed session after a lunch. And let's go ahead and make that 1:30, if that works, a 45-minute lunch for folks. So we'll gather at 1:30 in room 1810. And we will be meeting on the Delta Conveyance Project and sites. So yeah, new meeting room, 1810. It should be up on folks' calendars. But again, we'll be in recess then until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you, everyone, for just a great board meeting here today. Great discussion on our Racial Equity Action Plan. Have a good evening. Be safe, be well. We'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you. We're in recess until then.